Come over right now and pick up the old woman we ejected from our house because we want nothing to do with her. About a month after my father's funeral, Jackson called unexpectedly. He had kicked my mother out and demanded that I take care of her from now on. I was stunned, unable to immediately grasp the situation. Are you kidding? You didn't actually kick my mom out of the house. Come see for yourself, I exclaimed, bewildered. Oh, and I let her take Dad's memorial tablet, Jackson added casually. I was taken aback. Why would you do something so heartless? Mom's just a burden now that we can't get Dad's inheritance. I have no use for Mom, Jackson retorted callously. She's just a poor burden, isn't she? I was shocked. It turned out that my late father had left behind debts, and after settling them, there was no inheritance left. Worse still, Jackson and his wife had been living in the family home all this time. It was outrageous. It's getting dark soon. If you don't come to pick her up, Mom will be sleeping on the streets, Jackson warned. How could you be so cruel? I'll never forgive you for this, Jackson, I shouted, but he hung up without a word. Subsequent calls went unanswered. When I finally reached my mother, she confirmed everything Jackson had said. Angry and worried, I had no choice but to drive over to where she was. I am Lily, a 27-year-old woman in a hurry. 3 years ago, I married Mason, who is the same age as me, and we've been living together since. At the beginning of our marriage, we lived with my parents in the family home. But 2 years ago, Jackson and his wife abruptly moved in, claiming our presence made the place crowded. My older brother Jackson, 8 years my senior, has always been selfish, but his marriage seems to have amplified that trait. Our family home, where I was born and raised, is a spacious mansion inherited from my grandfather with extensive land. There should be no discomfort in living together. I was not satisfied with the situation and argued with Jackson, but my husband, who hates conflicts, urged us to leave. Around that time, my father was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver, which had already significantly worsened. I wanted to spend his last moments with him, but that didn't happen. The disease consumed my father rapidly, and he passed away a month ago. My heart ached, knowing that my mother must be in much more pain than I was to have my own brother treat us this way amidst all the fresh sorrow. It was pitiful. What would happen next was truly shocking. An hour later, when we arrived at our family home, my mom was sitting desolate on a suitcase in the garden. The front door was locked. Jackson, she said, had taken her keys, using my set of keys. I opened the door and entered with my mom. Jackson and Olivia were sprawled on the sofa, nonchalantly watching TV. Is this some kind of joke? I demanded. How did you get in? I used my key to open the front door. Isn't it obvious? Jackson replied dismissively. Slipped my mind. Leave your key, take the old lady, and go. This isn't funny. How can you be watching TV after kicking your own mother out of the house? I retorted. Besides, if the house remained even after Dad's debts were paid off, Mom has a right to live here. Huh? What are you talking about? Jackson scoffed. Infuriated by his dismissive attitude, I stood in front of the TV. Mom has a right to inherit this house. If you can't live with her, you should be the one to leave, I insisted. Shut up. This house is mine. Dad gave it to me when he was alive, Jackson snapped back. Don't act smart without knowing anything. What do you mean? There's no way Dad gave this house to you before he died, I countered. Mom also looked puzzled, shaking her head in disbelief. Jackson smirked and got up from the sofa, bringing out an envelope from a room in the back. Look at this. What's this? I asked, taking the envelope. Inside were documents proving the inheritance prepared by a judicial scribe, along with his real estate ownership certificate. He said that the property had been transferred to his name a month before Dad passed away, Jackson announced triumphantly. Mom and I were shocked as we looked at the documents. Why would Dad do something like this? I murmured, feeling a mix of confusion and betrayal. Asking a departed person didn't yield an answer. I sighed, looking at his picture. Why would Dad hand over the house to Jackson without discussing it with Mom? Jackson simply shrugged, a smug grin on his face. I'm his favorite, of course, Jackson boasted. I told him that Mom would take the house once he passed away, so he gave it to me while he was still alive. That can't be. I can't believe it. Open your eyes and face the reality, I exclaimed in disbelief. No matter how many times we checked the document, the property was in Jackson's name. All this just for a house, my mom muttered in disbelief. Is there no other inheritance? Nothing left for Mom. Be glad that the debts are cleared, Jackson retorted. This can't be real. You're not just worrying about Mom. You realize there's no inheritance for you either, right? The bank card he handed over contained only a few dollars. I wasn't after Dad's inheritance, but it was a shock to learn that he had left me nothing. This is too cruel, I muttered, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. To add insult to injury, Olivia was laughing heartily, seeing our dejection. Now get lost, you poor people. You have no business here, she sneered. Jackson and Olivia forcibly drove us out of the house. Ouch, that hurts, Mom cried out as she fell and scraped her palm when they pushed us out. Blood seeped from the wound as I wrapped her hand in my handkerchief. Tears of frustration welled up and fell. Seeing me like this, my mother gently wiped my tears, her eyes filled with sorrow as well. Mom, our place is small, but come stay with us. But I don't want to impose on Mason. I'll find somewhere else to stay, Mom protested. Don't worry, I just can't leave you like this. I'm going to call Mason right now. Just wait, I said, wiping my tears. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed my husband. From the other end of the line, I heard Mason's voice. Hello, Mason. I apologize for calling out of the blue, but my mom has been kicked out of her house, I explained to my surprised husband. He hummed in understanding, though he seemed a bit hesitant. I held my breath, waiting for Mason's response. Our apartment is pretty cramped compared to Mom's house. It might not be the most comfortable, I cautioned. Yeah, our place is tiny, but I don't mind. Bring your mom over. We've had times where we were taken care of at home too. In times of trouble, we should help each other out, Mason responded warmly. Thank you so much, I replied gratefully. My husband is a kind man with a big heart. He could never leave someone in need. Quickly, we took Mom to our apartment, and from that day on, we lived together. However, living with 3 people in our small apartment was certainly cramped. We didn't have enough savings to buy a house yet, but moving to a slightly larger place might be good. I feel bad for your mom in this small space, Mason admitted as we searched for properties on the computer. After a while, my mom's cell phone rang. She hung up and said something we never could have imagined. Why don't we live in my Highlands condominium? She suggested. Wait, what Highlands condominium? I asked, taken aback. My mother began to explain, much to our surprise. Apparently, my grandfather, who was a wealthy man, was quite a spendthrift and spent all the money he made in a day. In order to deal with his constant borrowing, my grandmother had no choice but to sell off their farmland to make ends meet. According to my mom, my father was also a big spender, but we didn't have any assets other than the house we lived in. So, I was really worried about our future. That's why I invested in real estate with the money. I was taken aback when my mom revealed that in addition to the Highland condominium, she was also managing an apartment building and had made a significant amount of money from her real estate investments. My husband and I were absolutely stunned. I can't even comprehend this. It's too amazing, I murmured. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Anyway, I just got a call from the management company that there's a vacancy in the Highland condominium. We can move in next month. What do you think? Mom asked. There was no reason to refuse such a generous offer, especially since the Highland condominium had 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, located just a 5-minute walk from the station. It was much more comfortable than our current situation. Thank you, Mom, but we may only be able to pay as much rent as we are for the apartment, I said, feeling hesitant. You don't need to worry about that. We have to do this properly, even if we're family, Mom insisted. Oh, I need to tell the landlord that we're moving out. As we beamed with joy, time flew by as we busied ourselves preparing to move into our new home. Before we knew it, 2 months had passed and we were living in the Highland condominium. One day, as I was about to head out for some shopping, I was taken aback when the Jackson couple suddenly appeared in front of the condominium entrance. Why are you, a pauper, living in the Highland condominium? Did you hit the jackpot or something? They sneered. Of course not. Highlands condominium has always belonged to my mom, I replied calmly. Jackson and Olivia were both taken aback. What? They exclaimed in unison, looking at the towering condominium in disbelief. Their confused and goofy expressions were priceless, and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jackson's face flushed red with anger. That wretched woman. I can't believe she was hiding this from us while pretending to be poor, he seethed. My mom never said she was poor. You just assumed it, Jackson. Plus, she inherited a large house. What's wrong with that? I retorted. That's not the point. Don't yell here. It's disrespectful to the other residents. Ignoring his outbursts, I continued. Besides, how did you know I was here? Jackson said that when he couldn't reach my mother, he tracked her down using her mobile phone's location. Olivia explained. Why are you trying to contact Mom now after kicking her out? I bet it's something nasty again, I accused. Regardless, I insisted on seeing my mother. Let me in now. You must be joking. If you hurt Mom again, I couldn't bear it. If you have something to say, you can tell me, I added firmly. But the Jackson couple kept insisting on seeing my mother without revealing why. They seemed rather flustered. Weren't you living comfortably in your huge family house, just the two of you? I pressed. It's none of your business, Jackson snapped. Fine, if you don't want to tell me, that's okay. I have to go now. Bye, I said, trying to walk past them. Suddenly, Jackson grabbed my arm tightly. Ouch. Let me go, I exclaimed. Just call Mom, he demanded. Absolutely not. I'll call the police, I threatened. But Jackson scoffed at me. There's no way the police would come for a simple family argument. Even if they did, there's no way you could sue me for just grabbing your arm. I had to admit he had a point. Calling the police over something so minor might not only be futile but also disruptive to others. Feeling bad, I ended up not saying anything. Fine, I'll tell my mom, but only if you tell me why you're here. I relented. Jackson and Olivia hesitated before Jackson spoke up. The utility bills for that house are ridiculous. Just for the AC, the electric bill is $500. This is no joke. Their old traditional style house had more than 8 rooms, so it was no surprise that utility costs were high. But even so, a $500 electricity bill seemed a little steep, especially considering it was a particularly hot summer. I thought you would have known that from the start. How would we have known? Mom used to pay the bills. Jackson scratched his head frantically while Olivia fumed. Do you know the property tax for that house is $5,000 a year? Olivia added, exasperated. What? I can't believe you didn't know. Why would an old house like that cost so much? How are we supposed to pay that? Our house is old and has a large yard, so it's only natural that it would cost a lot to maintain, I pointed out. And apparently it costs more in taxes to give away property while you're alive than after you pass away. This is going to be tough going forward. Wait, is that true? Jackson asked incredulously. Seeing the stunned expressions on the Jacksons' faces, I explained that this was all true information I had heard from my mom. The color drained from the Jacksons' faces. Olivia burst out in anger. It's your fault for not doing your homework. They started fighting right in front of me. After all the trouble we went through to get Dad to change the name on the house. This is too much, Jackson complained. That's what you get for doing something so underhanded, Olivia retorted. But even Dad said clearly that it would be better to give it to me than to your mom. I can't believe it, I muttered, shocked into silence as I realized that my father had disregarded my mom and me. Seizing the moment, Jackson made an outrageous request. You can have the house. Let's exchange it for this Highlands condominium, he proposed. What are you talking about? This isn't mine. It belongs to Mom. Please talk to Mom for me. I beg you. I promise to pass on your message. Nothing more, I pleaded. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Jackson snapped, his tone incredulous. Feeling ridiculous for even engaging with them, I gave up on shopping and started to head back into the Highlands condominium through the entrance. But the Jacksons tried to follow me, their audacity leaving me speechless. I'll sue you for trespassing, I threatened. You just told us that wouldn't be a legal issue, Olivia countered. It seemed like they wouldn't get the message until they suffered a real consequence. Exasperated, I called out to the management office next to the entrance. Excuse me, could you please call security? Someone who's not a resident of the Highlands condominium is trying to force their way in, I explained. The security guard, who was on standby 24/7, came running immediately. With the large security guard in front of them, the Jacksons were startled. I warned them once again to avoid the same thing happening in the future. I didn't call the police just now because you only grabbed my arm. But if you try to use force or enter the Highlands condominium again, I will really call the police, okay? I cautioned. We beg you, don't do that. If I even catch a glimpse of you, I'll report it. So go back to your mansion that you got from Dad. Got it? I added firmly. Apparently scared of the police, the Jacksons hastily retreated. I went back to my apartment and told my mother about the exchange with the Jacksons. But why did Dad let Jackson inherit the house? I wondered, feeling downcast. Mom smiled. Dad must have known what he was doing. When Dad let Jackson and her inherit the house, he didn't want to burden me or you, Lily. Even though Dad was indifferent about money, he cared for me a lot. Of course, he always said he loved you, Lily, so much. I was overjoyed to hear that my father felt that way about me. When my mom heard about the inheritance from Jackson, she muttered, "Are you going this far?" Because she realized that he had given a severe punishment to Jackson, who was always self-centered. "You knew how Dad felt, Mom?" I asked. "Of course, dear. We've been together for 38 years. I know what he's thinking without him saying a word. Besides, Jackson never took care of Dad when he was sick," Mom explained. I was under the impression that the Jacksons were looking after my father. However, it turns out they hardly ever visited him, not at home and barely in the hospital. When I visited my dad, he would often tell me, "Jackson comes to see me, and you have your job to attend to, Lily. There's no need for you to go out of your way." I took his words to heart, not realizing that it was a gentle lie meant to ease my worries. I had it all wrong about Dad. I feel awful. I want to apologize. "Don't fret, Lily. Your feelings are reaching Dad in heaven. The ones who should worry are the Jacksons. Who these days would buy a big, high-maintenance house like that? I bet they'll struggle to find a buyer," Mom reassured me. The truth in my mom's previously mischievous, gleeful words became evident after a while. The Jacksons, unable to maintain the house on their own, put it up for sale, but couldn't find a buyer. They continued to live in it even a year later. In the midst of all this, Olivia accidentally started a grease fire while cooking chicken in the house. It quickly burned down, and since they didn't have money for fire insurance, their life is going to get even tougher. "Well, while I understand their predicament, it doesn't concern me," I remarked. Apparently, the Jacksons are now camping out in the burned-down remains of their house. Living in the Highlands condominium is absolutely fantastic, and I can only feel gratitude toward my mother. I've been paying my mom rent every month, but it seems she's been saving it all to ensure we won't face hardship in the future. Every day is filled with peace and happiness as I live with my incredible mother and kind husband. As I visited my father's grave, I vowed to him that I would continue to repay my mother's kindness.
I always thought family meant everything to my brother Sullivan, until the day I discovered his wedding announcement in the society pages of the Boston Globe. There it was in black and white. My own brother, married into the prestigious Martin family, without breathing a word to any of us. My name is Tori, and that morning changed everything. I was having breakfast with Mom at our small kitchen table, watching her do the crossword puzzle like she did every Sunday, when I nearly choked on my coffee. "Mom," I whispered, my hands trembling as I held the paper. "You need to see this." She looked up, reading glasses perched on her nose, and took the paper from my shaking hands. The color drained from her face as she read the announcement. The coffee pot between us grew cold as we sat in stunned silence. "But we just had dinner with him last week," she finally managed. "He didn't say anything about being engaged, let alone married." The announcement described an intimate ceremony at the Martin estate, complete with a string quartet and champagne fountain. The bride, Rosalie Martin, looked radiant in designer white. And there was Sullivan, my brother, beaming in a tuxedo that probably cost more than our monthly rent. "I'm calling him," I said, grabbing my phone. Mom reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. "Wait, honey, let's think about this." But I was already dialing. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and again. Finally, a text came through. "Can't talk now. On honeymoon. We'll explain everything later." "We'll explain everything later?" I read aloud, my voice cracking. "That's all he has to say?" Mom's shoulders slumped as she stared at the wedding photo. "I always wanted to see him in a tuxedo on his wedding day," she whispered. "I just thought I'd be there to see it." That's when the tears started falling down her cheeks. My mother, who'd raised us alone after Dad died, who'd worked 2 jobs to put food on our table, who'd never missed a single one of Sullivan's baseball games or my dance recitals, sat there crying over her Sunday crossword puzzle. I felt something snap inside me. 3 weeks later, Sullivan finally showed up at our door. He was tanned from his honeymoon, wearing an expensive watch that caught the light as he spread his hands apologetically. "It just happened so fast," he explained, pacing our small living room. "Rosalie's family, they have connections. They're opening doors for me I never dreamed possible." "Doors?" I interrupted. "What about the door to your own home? The one you walked out of without a word?" "Tori, please understand. This was a strategic decision. The Martins, they're different from us. They have expectations about these things. A big wedding would have been complicated." "Complicated?" Mom's voice was barely above a whisper. "We're complicated?" Sullivan ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair. "That's not what I meant. Look, I'm still me. I'm still your son, your brother. Nothing's changed." But everything had changed. I could see it in the way he kept checking his phone, the way his eyes darted around our modest living room like he was seeing it for the first time, and finding it wanting. "I have to go," he said after barely 15 minutes. "Board meeting in the morning, but I'll make it up to you both, I promise. Things are going to be different now. Better." After he left, Mom went to her room and closed the door. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the family photos on our refrigerator. Sullivan and me at the beach. Sullivan's college graduation, where Mom and I had cheered so loud we'd embarrassed him. All those memories, and he'd thrown them away for a champagne fountain and a string quartet. That night, I sat at my laptop until dawn, researching business schools and startup strategies. I'd always had a head for numbers, but I'd put my own ambitions on hold to help Mom with the bills after college. Now, looking at the acceptance letter I'd never opened from Harvard Business School, I made a decision. "I'm going back to school," I announced at breakfast the next morning. "And then I'm going to build something of my own. Something bigger than anything the Martins have." Mom looked up from her coffee, her eyes still red from crying. "Honey, don't let anger drive your decisions." "It's not anger, Mom," I said, even though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's clarity. Sullivan showed us exactly who he is. Now it's my turn to show him who I am. I didn't know then that it would take me 7 years to build my revenge. I didn't know the price I'd pay, or the lessons I'd learn. I just knew that somewhere between that wedding announcement and my brother's dismissive goodbye, the path of my life had shifted, and I was ready to walk it no matter where it led. 7 years can change everything. I learned that sitting in my corner office, staring at the skyline of downtown Boston while Zoe, my best friend and business partner, paced in front of my desk. "Have you seen this?" She tossed a financial report onto my desk. "Sullivan's company is hemorrhaging money. Their stock dropped 30% this quarter alone." I picked up the report, scanning the numbers I'd already memorized. "Looks like the Martin family connections aren't worth what they used to be." "Are you smiling?" Zoe stopped pacing. "Tori, I know that look." I wasn't smiling. Not exactly. But seeing Sullivan's company falter stirred something in me I couldn't quite name. "We should consider acquiring them," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Their client base would complement our portfolio." "Their client base is jumping ship faster than rats from a burning building," Zoe countered. "Besides, isn't this a little personal?" The intercom buzzed before I could answer. "Ms. Wise, Mr. Oliver is here for your meeting." Deacon Oliver walked in moments later, impeccable in his tailored suit. As one of our major investors, he had a keen eye for opportunities and weaknesses. "Ladies," he nodded, taking a seat. "I assume you've seen the news about Sullivan Industries?" "We were just discussing it," Zoe said, shooting me a warning look. "Good." Deacon leaned forward. "Because I think we should make a play for them. Their technology patents alone are worth the investment." I kept my face carefully blank. "You think it's a good fit?" "I think it's perfect timing. They're vulnerable, we're strong. Simple as that." He paused, studying me. "Unless there's something I should know?" "No," I said quickly. Too quickly. Zoe jumped in. "We'll need to do our due diligence. Their financial situation is exactly why we should move now," Deacon interrupted. "Before someone else does." After he left, Zoe closed my office door and turned to me. Are you really ready for this? To face him? I thought about Mom, who still did her crossword puzzles every Sunday, leaving the chair across from her empty just in case. About the wedding invitations we never received to any of Sullivan's society events. About the way he dismissed our family like we were something to be ashamed of. I'm more than ready, I said. That evening, I met Quinn, my mentor, for drinks at our usual spot. The bar was quiet, jazz playing softly in the background. You've built something remarkable, Quinn said, swirling his scotch. But revenge is a tricky business. It can consume you if you're not careful. This isn't about revenge, I protested. It's a sound business decision. Quinn's laugh was gentle but knowing. Keep telling yourself that. Just remember, the moment you acquire his company, everything changes. Are you prepared for those changes? I thought about the day I'd started this journey. How I'd walked into my first business class at Harvard with nothing but determination and a student loan. How I'd met Zoe in that class, and how we'd stayed up late planning our future company. How every setback had only made me work harder. I built this company from nothing, I said, while Sullivan rode his wife's family connections straight to the top. Now he's falling, and I'm rising. That's not revenge. That's karma. Karma doesn't usually require a hostile takeover, Quinn pointed out. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Zoe. Turn on the business news, she said without preamble. Now. I signaled the bartender to change the channel. There was Sullivan, looking considerably less polished than his wedding photos, standing at a podium. Confident that Sullivan Industries will weather this temporary setback, he was saying. Our foundation is strong, our future is bright. Liar, I whispered, watching his left eye twitch, a tell he'd had since childhood. The market's not buying it, Zoe said in my ear. Their stock dropped another 8% after hours. I watched my brother field questions, his confidence cracking slightly around the edges. He looked older, tired. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then he said something that made my blood freeze. My family has always believed in perseverance through adversity, he declared proudly. It's how we were raised. Quinn must have seen my expression change. Tori? I stood up, grabbing my coat. Call the board, I told Zoe. First thing tomorrow, we're making our move. Are you sure? Zoe asked. He wants to talk about family? I said, my voice hard. Fine, let's talk about family. I ended the call and looked at Quinn. He raised his glass in a silent toast. Well, he said, this should be interesting. As I walked out into the cool night air, I felt 7 years of preparation crystallizing into this moment. Sullivan had no idea what was coming, but he was about to learn that the sister he'd left behind had become someone entirely new, someone who knew exactly how to make him pay attention. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation as I laid out our acquisition strategy. 10 pairs of eyes watched me pace in front of the projection screen, numbers and graphs flickering behind me. Sullivan Industries is undervalued, I explained, clicking to the next slide. Their patents alone are worth twice their current market cap. With their stock price at an all-time low, the timing is perfect. And their leadership? Asked Patricia, our most skeptical board member. The current CEO will be replaced. I cut in smoothly. That's non-negotiable. Zoe coughed quietly beside me. I caught her warning glance and softened my tone. Their management has proven ineffective. Change is necessary for the company's survival. After the meeting, Zoe followed me to my office. Well, that wasn't obvious at all. What wasn't? The way you practically snarled at the mention of their CEO. She perched on the edge of my desk. The board's going to start asking questions if you can't keep your cool. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Coming for Sunday dinner? I stared at the message, remembering all the Sunday dinners Sullivan had missed. 7 years of empty chairs and unspoken words. I need to see Quinn, I said, grabbing my coat. I found him at his favorite spot in the public garden, feeding pigeons despite the "do not feed wildlife" signs. He looked up as I approached, patting the bench beside him. I wondered when you'd show up, he said. The board approved the acquisition plan. And how does that make you feel? I threw a handful of breadcrumbs to the pigeons. Like I'm finally winning. Winning what? Don't do that, I snapped. Don't make this into some therapy session. Quinn's silence was louder than any response. We watched the pigeons squabble over breadcrumbs until I couldn't stand it anymore. He took everything from us, I said. Our family, our trust, our dignity. He made Mom cry every Sunday for a year. And this will fix that? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Deacon. Turn on CNBC, he said without preamble. Sullivan's doing damage control. I pulled up the live stream on my phone. There was my brother, looking more polished than his last appearance, standing at another podium. Rumors of a hostile takeover are greatly exaggerated, he was saying. Sullivan Industries remains committed to independence and growth. Quinn leaned over to watch. Interesting choice of words. Independence. He's always been independent, I said bitterly. That's the problem. The camera panned to show Rosalie standing beside him, her hand on his arm. They looked like the perfect power couple, except I could see the strain around his eyes, the way his hands gripped the podium too tightly. I should call Mom, I said suddenly, before she sees this. Good idea. Quinn nodded. Family should hear news from family. The irony of his words wasn't lost on me. Mom answered on the first ring. I was just thinking about you, she said. I'm making your favorite lasagna for Sunday. Mom. I took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you. The silence on the other end stretched out after I explained everything. Finally, she spoke. Are you doing this for the right reasons? It's a smart business move, I said automatically. That's not what I asked. I watched a pigeon strut past, proud and purposeful. I'm doing it because I can, because he needs to see who I've become. And who is that, sweetheart? The question hit me harder than I expected. Quinn pretended to be completely absorbed in feeding the pigeons, but I knew he was listening. Someone who matters, I said finally. Someone he can't ignore. Mom sighed. You've always mattered, Tori. With or without a corner office. After we hung up, Quinn stood and brushed breadcrumbs from his coat. Your mother's a wise woman. She is, I agreed, but she's also too forgiving. And you're not forgiving enough, he countered. Be careful, Tori. Revenge is like holding a hot coal. You'll burn yourself trying to throw it at someone else. My phone buzzed again. Zoe with updates about the acquisition paperwork. The machinery was in motion. In a few weeks, I would be face to face with Sullivan, watching his world shift like mine had 7 years ago. Maybe I want to get burned, I told Quinn. He shook his head. No, you don't. You want justice. But remember, justice without mercy is just another form of cruelty. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Sometimes cruelty is earned. As I walked away, leaving Quinn with his pigeons and wisdom, I felt the weight of what was coming. Soon, Sullivan would learn that the sister he'd left behind had become someone with the power to reshape his world. The question was, would reshaping his world reshape mine too? The Boston Technology Summit was exactly the kind of event Sullivan loved. All glitz and networking, with champagne flowing freely. I watched from across the ballroom as he worked the crowd, that familiar, confident smile plastered on his face. Are you sure about this? Zoe whispered beside me. We could send someone else to make the initial contact. I adjusted my name tag, which read only TY's CEO. He won't recognize me. It's been 7 years and he's not exactly the type to read industry profiles. If you say so. Zoe grabbed 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter. But try not to look like you're planning his murder. I forced my shoulders to relax and plastered on my best networking smile. Across the room, Sullivan was deep in conversation with a group of investors. Rosalie stood at his side, elegant as ever in a designer dress that probably cost more than my first car. Time to mingle, I said, moving toward their group. As I approached, I caught fragments of Sullivan's conversation. Confident that our new initiatives will turn things around. The market just needs time to... Time isn't always on our side, though, is it? I interrupted smoothly, stepping into the circle. Especially in tech. Sullivan turned, that practiced smile never wavering. Indeed. And you are? T-wise, I said, extending my hand. I've been following your company's situation with interest. His handshake was firm, professional, no hint of recognition in his eyes. All situations are temporary. We're implementing aggressive growth strategies. Growth strategies require capital, I pointed out, and trust from investors. Something flickered in his expression, a crack in the confident facade. Rosalie touched his arm protectively. My husband has the full support of our board, she said, and our family. I couldn't help myself. Family support is crucial, isn't it? Nothing worse than feeling abandoned by those closest to you. Sullivan's left eye twitched. If you'll excuse us, I see some people we need to speak with. Of course, I smiled. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other soon. As they walked away, Zoe appeared at my elbow. Well, that was subtle as a sledgehammer. Did you see his face when I mentioned family? I took a long sip of champagne. He actually flinched. Tori. Zoe hesitated. Maybe Quinn is right. Maybe... Don't. I cut her off. The paperwork is already in motion. There's no turning back now. Later that evening, I found myself at the bar, watching Sullivan work the room. He'd always been good at this, making people feel important, special. It's how he'd charmed his way into the Martin family. Quite the performance, isn't it? A voice beside me made me jump. It was Deacon. I didn't know you'd be here, I said. I never miss a chance to watch Sharks Circle. He ordered a scotch. Speaking of which, our legal team finished the preliminary paperwork. We can move whenever you're ready. I watched Sullivan laugh at something Rosalie said, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. How long until the offer becomes public? 48 hours, give or take. Once we file with the SEC, the news will break fast. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Saw Sullivan on the business news again. Are you okay? Before I could respond, Sullivan's voice carried across the bar. The market is cyclical. What goes down must come up. Unless someone pushes it further down, I muttered. Deacon raised an eyebrow. You know, when I first suggested this acquisition, I thought it was just business. But there's something personal here, isn't there? I met his gaze steadily. Everything's personal in business. Isn't that what you always say? He studied me for a moment. Just make sure whatever this is doesn't interfere with our bottom line. Trust me, I said, watching Sullivan and Rosalie glide toward the exit. The bottom line is exactly what I'm focused on. His bottom line. After they left, I stayed at the bar, nursing my drink and thinking about Sunday dinners and crossword puzzles. About the way Mom's voice still caught whenever she mentioned Sullivan's name. About the look in his eyes tonight when I'd mentioned family. That brief flash of, what? Guilt? Fear? Or just annoyance at a presumptuous stranger? My phone buzzed again. Quinn this time. How did it go? I typed back. He didn't recognize me. Quinn's response was immediate. Maybe that's not the real problem. I put my phone away without responding. In 48 hours, Sullivan's carefully constructed world would start to crumble. He'd discover that the sister he'd forgotten had become someone with the power to destroy everything he'd built. And yet, watching him tonight, I'd felt something unexpected. A hollow ache where satisfaction should have been. But it was too late for second thoughts. The machinery was in motion, and soon everyone would know exactly who T-Wise really was. The news broke at 9:01 a.m. sharp. I watched from my office as CNBC's ticker flashed the headline, Breaking, Wise Enterprises launches, hostile takeover bid for Sullivan Industries. Zoe burst through my door without knocking. It's chaos out there. Sullivan's board is in emergency session. Their stock is going crazy and... My phone exploded with notifications. First came the text from Mom. Be careful, sweetheart. Then Quinn. Remember what we talked about. And finally Deacon. Boardroom. Now. Showtime. I said, straightening my jacket. The boardroom was packed when we arrived. Deacon stood at the head of the table, fielding calls from investors. Our legal team huddled in one corner, papers spread everywhere. Their CEO is demanding a meeting, Deacon announced as I walked in. Immediately. Good, I said, taking my seat. Set it up for this afternoon. Patricia cleared her throat. Perhaps someone else should handle the initial. No, I cut her off. I'll do it. Tori, Zoe whispered. Maybe they're right. You're too close to this. Before I could respond, the TV on the wall caught everyone's attention. Sullivan was making an emergency press statement outside his office building. This hostile takeover attempt is unwarranted and unwelcome, he declared, looking directly into the cameras. Sullivan Industries is not for sale. Rosalie stood behind him, her face a mask of controlled concern. The reporters shouted questions. What about the falling stock price? How will you fight this? Do you know T.Y.'s personally? Sullivan's eye twitched at the last question. I've had limited interaction with their CEO, but I can assure you, this attempt will fail. Limited interaction, I repeated softly. That's one way to put it. My phone rang. It was Mom again. I stepped out to take the call. I saw him on TV, she said without preamble. He looks terrible. He should. Tori. She paused. Is this really what you want? Before I could answer, Zoe poked her head out. They're here, Sullivan and his team. Mom, I have to go. Just remember, whatever happens, you're still my daughter, and he's still your brother. I ended the call and took a deep breath. When I walked into the conference room, Sullivan was already seated, flanked by his lawyers. He stood when I entered, that practiced smile in place. Ms. Wise, I believe we met at the... His voice trailed off as recognition finally hit. The color drained from his face. Tori? Hello, Sullivan. I sat down across from him. It's been a while. This is impossible. He looked at his lawyers, then back at me. You can't be... The CEO of Wise Enterprises? The one trying to buy your company? I smiled. Surprise. His lawyers shifted uncomfortably. One whispered something in his ear, but Sullivan waved him off. Is this some kind of joke? He demanded. Some kind of revenge? Revenge? I kept my voice level. This is business, Sullivan. Just like your marriage was business, remember? A strategic decision? He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I won't let you destroy everything I've built. Like you destroyed our family? That's not... I didn't... For once, he seemed at a loss for words. Deacon cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the terms of the offer. The terms are simple, I said, sliding a folder across the table. We buy controlling interest. You step down. Clean break. Sullivan's hands shook as he opened the folder. This is insane. You're my sister. Am I? I thought we were just complicated. Isn't that what you called us? His lawyers huddled around him, whispering urgently. I could see the moment he realized how trapped he was. The same look he'd had as a kid when he got caught in a lie. I need time, he said finally, to consider options. You have 24 hours, I replied, standing up. Oh, and Sullivan? Maybe call Mom sometime. She still does crosswords on Sunday mornings. I walked out before he could respond, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Zoe caught up with me at the elevator. Well, that was intense, she said. It's not over yet. No, she agreed. But are you sure this is what you wanted? The look on his face? I thought about that look. Shock giving way to recognition, then fear, then something else. Something that looked almost like shame. What I want, I said as the elevator doors closed, is for him to understand what he did. Really understand. But as we descended, I couldn't shake the memory of his shaking hands or the way his voice cracked when he said, sister. 7 years of planning, and somehow victory felt different than I'd imagined. Tomorrow, Sullivan would have to make his choice. And so I realized, would I? 24 hours later, I stood at the podium in Sullivan Industries' main conference room, facing a sea of shocked faces. The acquisition was complete. Sullivan had folded faster than anyone expected. As your new CEO, I announced, I want to assure everyone that this transition will be smooth and... The door burst open. Sullivan stormed in, Rosalie right behind him. You can't do this, he shouted. These people trust me, they depend on me. Security moved to intercept him, but I held up my hand. Let him speak. After all, family should always have a voice, right, Sullivan? The room went deadly quiet. Employees exchanged confused glances. Rosalie's perfectly maintained composure cracked. Family? She whispered. Sullivan, what is she talking about? I stepped away from the podium. Oh, he didn't tell you? I'm his sister, the one he erased from his life 7 years ago when he married into your family. Sullivan's face reddened. That's not what happened. I was protecting what? I cut him off. Your image? Your social climbing? Tell them, Sullivan. Tell them how you got married without telling your own mother. How you never invited us to a single family event. How you pretended we didn't exist because we weren't good enough for your new life. Rosalie took a step back from him. Is this true? Rosalie, please. He reached for her hand. I can explain. Explain what? I pressed. How you told us it was a strategic decision to exclude your family from your wedding? Or how about explaining to your employees how you've been making the same kind of strategic decisions with their careers? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I could see recognition dawning on some faces. Employees who'd been let go without warning. Projects canceled without explanation. That's different, Sullivan protested. Business decisions are just like family decisions to you. I finished. Disposable when inconvenient. Rosalie's voice shook. 7 years, and you never once mentioned a sister, a mother. Because he was ashamed, I said. Not of us, but of himself. Sullivan's lawyers appeared at the door, but he waved them away. For the first time, I saw his carefully constructed facade completely crumble. You don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. I had to become someone else. Someone worthy of... Worthy? Rosalie interrupted. My family would have welcomed yours with open arms. We're not monsters, Sullivan. No, I agreed. The monster was the one who thought his own family would embarrass him. The room had grown so quiet you could hear phones buzzing with incoming news alerts. Our takeover was making headlines, but not for the reasons anyone expected. I want to meet them, Rosalie suddenly announced. Your mother. I want to know the family my husband denied me. Sullivan's face went pale. Rosalie, please. Mom still sets a place for you, I told him. Every Sunday, even after 7 years. Something in his expression changed, a crack in the armor I'd been trying to break through for 7 years. I never meant, he started. To hurt us? I finished. To break Mom's heart? To pretend your own sister was a stranger at a business conference? Security shifted uncomfortably. Employees whispered among themselves. Rosalie stood apart from Sullivan now, her arms crossed. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, I announced to the room. Everyone except the executive team is dismissed. And Sullivan? You might want to call Mom. She's probably watching this on the business news right now. As people filed out, Sullivan remained rooted to the spot. Rosalie touched his arm briefly. I'll be at my mother's, she said quietly. When you're ready to tell me the whole truth about your family, your real family, you know where to find me. She walked out, leaving Sullivan looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. For a moment, I saw my brother again. Not the polished CEO, but the kid who used to protect me from playground bullies. Was it worth it? I asked softly. Trading us for all this? He looked around the conference room, at the empty chairs and the logo he'd built his life around. I don't know anymore, he whispered. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. But remember, healing takes more courage than hurting. I looked at Sullivan, still standing there like a statue. "Board meeting's in 8 minutes," I said. "You can stay if you want. Or you can go call Mom. Your choice. But this time, make it for the right reasons." He met my eyes for the first time. Really met them. And I saw something there I hadn't expected. Recognition. Not just of who I was, but of who he'd been. Who he'd become. And maybe, just maybe, who he could be again. The choice was his now. And for the first time in 7 years, I honestly didn't know what he would choose. Sullivan chose the board meeting. Of course he did. But 2 hours later, as I sat in my new office, his old office, he appeared in the doorway, looking more disheveled than I'd seen him in 7 years. "I called Mom," he said quietly. I set down the acquisition papers I'd been reviewing. "And?" She cried. He ran a hand through his hair. She cried, and all she said was, "I'm making lasagna on Sunday." "That's Mom for you." He took a tentative step into the office. "You've done well for yourself." "No thanks to you." "Is that what this is about?" He gestured around the office. "Proving something to me?" "Not everything is about you, Sullivan." I stood up. "Though that's always been hard for you to understand." "Then explain it to me," he said, dropping into a chair. "Explain how my little sister engineered a hostile takeover just to prove a point." "A point?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about points? Let's talk about Mom working double shifts to put you through business school. Let's talk about her skipping meals so you could have new suits for interviews. Let's talk about how you repaid that by erasing us from your life." "I didn't erase you," he protested. "I was trying to protect—" "If you say protect one more time, I swear to God." "Fine." He stood up so quickly the chair toppled backward. "I was ashamed. Is that what you want to hear? I was ashamed of our cramped apartment, of Mom's waitress uniform, of everything that reminded me of where I came from." The words hung in the air between us. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic, oblivious to our drama unfolding 30 stories up. "Rosalie called me," I said finally. "She's having dinner with Mom tonight." Sullivan's face went pale. "What?" "Funny how your wife turns out to be a better person than you gave her credit for." He slumped against the wall. "I've lost everything, haven't I?" "No," I said sharply. "You gave everything away. There's a difference." My phone buzzed. Zoe reminding me about the press conference scheduled for tomorrow. The official announcement of the new leadership structure. "You know what the worst part is?" I continued. "Mom never stopped loving you. Never stopped defending you. Sullivan's just busy," she'd say. "Sullivan's building his future. Even when you missed her birthday. Even when you sent a generic Christmas card addressed to family." "I can't change the past," he whispered. "No, but you can stop running from it." I walked to the window, looking out at the city. "You have a choice now, Sullivan. Keep pretending to be someone you're not, or remember who you really are." "And who am I?" His voice cracked. "The ambitious brother who betrayed his family? The failed CEO who lost his company to his sister? You're the kid who taught me to ride a bike," I said, still facing the window. "Who helped me with my math homework? Who promised Mom we'd always take care of each other?" When I turned around, he was crying. Actually crying, like I hadn't seen since Dad's funeral. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. "Start with Sunday dinner," I suggested. "Mom's making lasagna, remember?" He wiped his eyes. "Just like that? After everything?" "No, not just like that. You have a lot to make up for. To Mom, to Rosalie, to me. But you have to start somewhere." My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. "Rosalie is lovely. Bringing her famous apple pie on Sunday. Will we need 2 pies?" I showed Sullivan the text. His hands shook as he read it. "I don't deserve this chance," he said. "Probably not," I agreed. "But that's the thing about family, real family. They love you anyway." He handed back my phone. "What about the company?" "The company stays with me. You need to focus on fixing what's really broken, and it's not your stock price. He nodded slowly. I should go find Rosalie. Yes, you should. I sat back down at my desk. And Sullivan? Mom likes yellow roses, in case you were wondering what to bring on Sunday. He paused at the door. Tori, I'm sorry. For everything. I know, I said. Now prove it. After he left, I called Quinn. Well, he answered. Did revenge taste as sweet as you imagined? I thought about Sullivan's tears, about Mom's lasagna, about Rosalie's apple pie. It wasn't about revenge in the end, I realized. It was about breaking down the walls he built, even if I had to use a corporate battering ram to do it. Quinn chuckled. And now? I looked at the family photo on my desk, the old one from before everything changed. Now we see if he remembers how to be a brother again. The scent of Mom's lasagna filled the house as I helped set the table. 5 places, not just the usual 3. Zoe had brought wine and Rosalie's apple pies cooled on the counter. He's late, Mom said, checking her watch for the 3rd time. He'll come, Rosalie assured her, arranging flowers in a vase, yellow roses, just as I'd suggested. The doorbell rang. Mom froze, her hand clutching her crossword puzzle. I squeezed her shoulder as I passed. Sullivan stood on the porch, looking nothing like the polished CEO he'd been just days ago. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, holding a small wrapped package. I wasn't sure, he started. Just come in, I said. He stepped into the house and stopped short. The walls still held the same family photos he'd turned his back on. His graduation, my dance recitals, Mom's birthday parties. Nothing's changed, he whispered. Everything's changed, I corrected. But some things stay the same. Mom appeared in the hallway. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Sullivan crossed the space between them in 3 steps and wrapped her in a hug. I'm sorry, he said into her hair. I'm so sorry, Mom. She held him tight, and I saw tears rolling down her cheeks. My boy, she whispered. My beautiful, foolish boy. Rosalie and Zoe appeared from the kitchen, giving them space. I moved to join them, but Sullivan caught my arm. Wait, he said, pulling back from Mom. He handed her the package. Open it, please. Mom unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound book. She opened it and gasped. It's every crossword puzzle I missed, Sullivan explained. 7 years of Sundays. I did them all last night. Even the ones I got wrong, I kept them. Because that's what family does, right? We keep trying, even when we mess up. Mom touched the pages gently. You remembered. I never forgot, he said. I just lost my way. Well, Zoe announced, breaking the tension. The wine isn't getting any younger, and that lasagna smells amazing. We gathered around the table, the same table where I'd first seen Sullivan's wedding announcement all those years ago. Mom insisted he sit in his old spot, across from me. To new beginnings, Rosalie proposed, raising her glass. And old traditions, Mom added. Sullivan cleared his throat. I have something else to say. He looked at me. I've been thinking about what you said, about fixing what's really broken. I'm starting therapy next week, and I've enrolled in a community college teaching program. Teaching? I set down my fork. But I always said what I thought would impress people, he interrupted. But before all that, before the suits and the corner office, I loved tutoring kids in math. Remember? I did remember. He'd volunteered at the community center all through high school. What about your image? I couldn't help asking. He smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one I'd grown to hate. I think I'm done with images. Time to be real. Speaking of real, Rosalie chimed in. We're moving out of the mansion. Found a nice place closer to here, actually. Just a few blocks away. Mom dropped her fork. Really? If that's okay, Sullivan added quickly. We thought maybe we could do this more often. Sunday dinners. Every Sunday? Mom's voice wavered. Every Sunday, he confirmed. No more missed crosswords. Later, as we shared Rosalie's apple pie, I watched Sullivan help Mom with that day's puzzle. Zoe leaned over to whisper, "Still glad you orchestrated that hostile takeover?" I thought about it. You know what's funny? I thought taking his company would be the victory. But this... I gestured at the scene before us. Mom laughing at Sullivan's terrible pun, Rosalie sharing family recipes, the yellow roses brightening our modest dining room. This is the real win. You know? Sullivan called out, looking up from the puzzle. 6 down is redemption. No, it's not, Mom corrected. It's beginning. We all laughed, and in that moment, I felt the last pieces of my anger melt away. The brother who'd abandoned us was gone, but in his place was someone new. Someone real. Someone trying. And maybe that's what family is. Not the perfect image we present to the world, but the messy, complicated reality of people who keep showing up, keep trying, keep loving even when it's hard. "Hey, Tori," Sullivan said softly as we cleared the dishes. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I handed him a plate to dry. That's what big shot CEOs do for their little brothers. He laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound I hadn't heard in 7 years. Outside, the sun was setting on another Sunday, but this time no chairs sat empty. This time, every crossword square was filled with possibility.
I never thought I'd hear my own son call me baggage, but life has a way of delivering its cruelest blows through the people we love most. My name is Lillian, and for 25 years, my world revolved around my son, Easton. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment was dedicated to giving him the best life possible. I worked 2 jobs, gave up my dreams of becoming an artist, and poured everything I had into his future. And for the longest time, it felt worth it. That changed the day Andrea walked into our lives. "Mum, I want you to meet someone special," Easton had said over the phone. His voice carried that nervous excitement I hadn't heard since his first day of high school. "We're coming over for dinner tomorrow." I spent hours preparing his favorite lasagna, the recipe passed down from his grandmother. The house was spotless, and I'd even bought fresh flowers for the dining room table. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. "Mom, this is Andrea," Easton beamed, his arm wrapped around a striking young woman with perfectly styled hair and designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Andrea's smile didn't reach her eyes. "So nice to finally meet you, Lillian. Easton's told me so much." The way she said my name, like it was something distasteful, made my stomach clench. During dinner, Andrea dominated the conversation, talking about her job in marketing and her plans to climb the corporate ladder. Every time I tried to share a story about Easton's childhood, she'd cut me off with a new topic. "Oh, those stories are so dated," she'd say, waving her hand dismissively. "Easton's focused on his future now. Aren't you, baby?" Easton would nod, avoiding my eyes. The final blow came as they were leaving. I was in the kitchen cleaning up when I overheard their conversation by the front door. "Your mom's kind of clingy, isn't she?" Andrea's voice carried through the hallway. "I mean, all those old stories and pictures everywhere. Don't you think it's time to cut the cord?" I waited for Easton to defend me, to say something, anything. Instead, he laughed. "Yeah, I guess she can be a bit much sometimes." "More like baggage," Andrea said. "You're right," Easton replied. "Maybe it is time for some changes." The plate I was washing slipped from my hands, shattering in the sink. The sound must have startled them, because their voices dropped to whispers before the front door closed. I stood there, hands trembling in the soapy water, staring at the broken pieces. 25 years of memories flashed through my mind. Midnight feedings, school plays, scraped knees, college applications, graduation day. Every moment I'd chosen him over myself. My friend Ruby called later that night, as she did every Tuesday. "You sound off," she said. "What happened?" I told her everything. "That little shit," Ruby exploded. "After everything you've done for him. Lillian, maybe it's time you showed him exactly what he's taking for granted." "What do you mean?" Document it. Every sacrifice, every penny spent, every dream you put on hold. Make him see what he's throwing away for this girl. As I lay in bed that night, surrounded by the photos and memories Easton now seemed to find embarrassing, an idea took root. I got up and went to my closet, pulling out the old art portfolio case I'd kept all these years. Inside were the acceptance letters to art school I'd never attended, the scholarship I'd turned down to work full-time after Easton's father left. I opened my laptop and started typing. Dear Easton, before you dismiss this as the ramblings of your clingy mother, I want you to see exactly what love looks like. The words flowed easily, years of unspoken feelings finding their way onto the page. By morning, I had the beginning of something that would either bring my son back to me or set us both free. Either way, things were about to change. Andrea wanted me gone? Fine. But first, I would make sure my son understood exactly what he was losing. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply showing someone what they've thrown away. I picked up my phone and called the number I'd been too afraid to dial for 25 years. Hello, is this still the number for the Art Institute's adult education program? It was time to stop being baggage and start being Lillian again. The portfolio grew thicker with each passing day, as did the distance between Easton and me. 3 weeks had passed since that dinner, and he'd only called twice, both times to cancel our regular Sunday brunches. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by papers, photos, and receipts. Ruby perched on the chair across from me, reading through the latest addition to my collection. Look at this, I said, sliding over Easton's college tuition statements. I took out a second mortgage to pay for his engineering degree, lived on ramen noodles for 2 years. Ruby whistled. And now he can't even make time for brunch. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Through the window, I spotted Easton's car in the driveway, with Andrea in the passenger seat. I need to grab some of my old textbooks from the basement, Easton announced as they walked in, barely meeting my eyes. Andrea's cousin might need them. Of course, I replied, quickly gathering the portfolio papers. Would you like some coffee? We can't stay, Andrea cut in, her designer heels clicking on my hardwood floors. We have dinner reservations at LeBlanc. Ruby stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't believe we've met. I'm Ruby, Lillian's friend. Charmed, Andrea said, not sounding charmed at all. She turned to Easton. Baby, the reservation's at 7. We need to hurry. I followed them to the basement door, watching as Easton disappeared down the stairs. Andrea stayed behind, examining her manicure. You know, she said quietly, it's a bit sad, isn't it? Sitting around with old photos all day. Don't you have any hobbies? Before I could respond, shouting erupted from the basement. What do you mean you spent our vacation fund on a car? Easton's voice carried up the stairs. It's an investment in our future, Andrea snapped back. That beaten-up Honda of yours isn't suitable for someone in your position. What would my father think? Your father? What does he have to do with anything? He's offering you a position at his firm, Easton, but you need to look the part. That's why I used the money to put a down payment on the BMW. You did what? Easton's footsteps thundered up the stairs. That money was for our trip to Europe. Europe can wait, Andrea said, her voice honey-sweet again. This is about our future. Don't you want to succeed? I watched my son's face transform from anger to uncertainty, the same expression he'd worn as a child when someone offered him candy he knew he shouldn't take. I guess you're right, he finally said, deflating. But next time, please talk to me first. Andrea beamed victorious. Of course, baby. Now come on, we'll be late. They left without the textbooks, Easton trailing behind Andrea like a lost puppy. Ruby waited until their car disappeared before speaking. Did you record that conversation on your phone? I nodded, stopping the recording app. Added to the evidence pile. Good, Ruby said, helping me gather the scattered papers. But Lillian, watching this isn't healthy. You need to finish this portfolio and move on. Have you called the Art Institute back? I start classes next week. I admitted. Just 2 evenings to start. I haven't painted in decades. I might be terrible. But you'll be doing something for yourself, finally. Ruby picked up an old sketch I'd done of Easton as a baby. You've got talent, Lil. It's time to use it. That night, I added the recorded conversation to my portfolio, along with a letter I'd been dreading to write. Dear Easton, remember when you were 16, and that boy Tommy bullied you about your second-hand clothes? I told you that sometimes people who seem to care about us can actually be the ones hurting us the most. I wonder if you remember that conversation. I'm adding this letter to help you understand what I witnessed today. Not to hurt you, but because I love you too much to watch silently as history repeats itself. A text from Easton interrupted my writing. Sorry about today, Mum. Andrea's just stressed about work. Maybe we can do brunch next Sunday. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button. Instead, I opened my email and clicked on the Art Institute's welcome letter. The supply list for my first class stared back at me. Canvas, brushes, paints. Tomorrow, I decided, I would buy art supplies instead of groceries for Sunday brunch. It was time to paint my own future, even if it meant watching my son make his mistakes from a distance. Sometimes love means stepping back and letting karma take its course. The portfolio felt heavy in my hands as I walked up to Easton's apartment. 6 months of evidence, memories, and hard truths bound together in a leather case I'd once hoped would hold my own artwork. Ruby's words from this morning echoed in my head. You're doing the right thing, Lil. Stay strong. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding against my ribs. Andrea opened it, wearing one of Easton's old college shirts like a trophy. Oh, she said, her smile dropping. Easton didn't mention you were coming by. I texted him this morning. I stepped past her into the apartment I'd helped furnish, but barely recognized anymore. Designer pillows had replaced the ones I'd made. Family photos were gone, replaced by modern art prints. Mom? Easton emerged from the bedroom, looking surprised. I thought you were coming next weekend. We need to talk, I said, clutching the portfolio. Now. Andrea moved to stand beside him. We actually have plans. Alone, I added firmly. Easton glanced between us, then nodded. Give us a minute, babe. Andrea's heels clicked angrily as she retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door. We sat at the kitchen table, the one I'd refinished for his first apartment. I placed the portfolio between us. What's this? He asked. Everything, I replied, opening it to the first page. Every sacrifice, every choice, every moment that led us here. His eyes widened at the college tuition statements. Mom, Keep reading. He flipped through the pages. Medical bills from when he broke his arm in middle school. The foreclosure notice on my dream house after his father left. Bank statements showing withdrawn retirement funds to pay for his engineering internship. There's more, I said, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. The acceptance letter to art school I never attended. The gallery invitation I turned down. The small business loan I was approved for, but never used, because you needed braces that year. Easton's face paled as he reached the recent additions. Screenshots of Andrea's social media posts mocking my outdated home, the recorded conversation about the vacation fund, credit card statements showing her purchases on his accounts. I didn't know, he whispered, about any of this. You weren't supposed to. That's what mothers do. We shield our children from the hard parts. I took a deep breath. But now you're not a child anymore, and I'm not just a mother. The bedroom door cracked open. Andrea's voice carried across the apartment. Baby, we're going to be late for the reservation. Easton didn't look up from the portfolio. Why are you showing me this now? Because yesterday I got this. I pulled out one final paper, my acceptance letter to the Art Institute's full-time program. I'm moving to the city. I've already sold the house. You're what? He stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. But, where will I mean, what about your home, your safety net, your free storage space? I stood too, stronger than I'd felt in years. Those aren't my responsibilities anymore, Easton. They never should have been. She's manipulating you. Andrea burst out of the bedroom. Can't you see that? She's trying to make you feel guilty. The truth isn't manipulation, I said quietly. It's just the truth. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. I love you, Easton. I always will. But I love myself too, and it's time I proved it. Mom, wait, his voice cracked. Please, I didn't know. That's the problem, I replied. You never asked. The elevator ride down was a blur. Outside, Ruby waited in her car, just as promised. Did you do it? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I nodded, tears finally spilling over. He looked so lost, Ruby, like when he was little and couldn't find his favorite toy. Except he's not little anymore, she reminded me, pulling away from the curb. And you're not just his toy box. My phone buzzed with messages from Easton. Mom, please come back. We need to talk about this. I'm sorry. Andrea's wrong about you. The last message came as Ruby pulled up to my house. My former house, now sold to a young family with 2 kids. I found the sketch you did of me as a baby. I never knew you could draw like that. Why didn't you tell me? I turned off my phone and looked at the moving truck in my driveway. 25 years of memories packed into cardboard boxes, ready to make way for new ones. Ready? Ruby asked. No, I admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. Sometimes the hardest part isn't making the choice. It's living with it afterward. But as I walked toward my packed-up life, I felt lighter than I had in years. The portfolio had served its purpose. Now it was time to fill a new one. With art, with dreams, with me. 3 months into my new life, and my tiny studio apartment looked more like an artist's workspace than a home. Canvases lined the walls, some finished, others waiting for inspiration. Paint stains decorated every surface, including my clothes. You've got real talent, my art professor had said last week, studying my latest piece, a mother bird pushing her chick from the nest. Raw, emotional. Have you considered showing your work? I was arranging my newest paintings when Ruby burst through the door, waving her tablet. Lillian, you need to see this. She thrust the screen at me. Your story is trending on social media. I squinted at the article. Mother's Artistic Renaissance, from empty nest to empowerment. Someone had shared my journey on a popular parenting forum, and it had exploded overnight. Read the comments, Ruby insisted. Hundreds of mothers shared similar stories of sacrifice and lost dreams. Many asked how they could reclaim their own identities. This is bigger than just you, Ruby said, pacing excitedly. What if we created a space for women like this? A community center with art classes, support groups, career counseling. That's actually brilliant. I set down my paintbrush. But how would we even start? I've got savings, Ruby grinned, and you've got the story that's inspiring thousands. Let's do this. We spent the next week viewing potential spaces. The old warehouse on Mason Street caught my eye immediately. High ceilings, natural light, and enough room for studios and meeting spaces. As we explored the building, my phone buzzed. Easton's number flashed on the screen. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. Mum? His voice sounded different, tired. I saw the article about your art. Why didn't you tell me you were getting so much attention? Would you have been interested before? Silence stretched between us. Andrea's father offered me that job, he finally said. But there were conditions. I'd have to move across the country. Andrea's already looking at houses. And what do you want? I don't know anymore. He paused. Your paintings, they're amazing. That one of the mother bird. Is that how you felt? Still feel, I corrected gently. I have to go, Easton. I'm looking at a property for my new project. Project? A non-profit, for women who lost themselves in being everything to everyone else. More silence. Then, can I come see your art sometime? The gallery showing is next Friday. You're welcome to attend. I hesitated. Just you. After hanging up, I turned to find Ruby watching me. You okay? She asked. Better than okay. I gestured around the warehouse. This is it. This is where we'll build something meaningful. The next few weeks passed in a blur of renovation plans, permit applications, and painting. Women began reaching out, offering to volunteer, teach classes, share their stories. Each email reinforced that we were creating something important. One evening, as I was setting up my easel in what would become the main studio, a delivery arrived. The package contained a single sheet of weathered paper, my original application to art school from 25 years ago, with a post-it note attached. Found this while cleaning out Dad's old files. He never told you he intercepted your acceptance letter, did he? Andrea saw me looking at it and said I should throw it away. That's when I finally understood what you meant about people who hurt us while pretending to care. Easton. I sat down hard on my paint-splattered stool, staring at the yellowed paper. All those years wondering if I'd been good enough, and my ex-husband had simply decided for me. Ruby found me there an hour later, still holding the letter. Look at this, I said, showing her the paper and note. She read it twice. Are you okay? You know what? I am. I stood up, pinning the old acceptance letter to my inspiration board. This isn't about what was taken from me anymore. It's about what I'm building now. Speaking of building, Ruby smiled. The contractor called. We can start renovations next week. I looked around the empty warehouse, already seeing what it would become. Walls filled with art, rooms buzzing with conversation and creativity, women rediscovering themselves. My phone chimed with a text from Easton. Andrea's furious I'm not taking the job. Says I'm throwing away our future. Funny, that's exactly what you wrote about in the portfolio, isn't it? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I picked up my brush and faced my latest canvas. A phoenix rising from ashes, its wings spread wide and proud. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, growing stronger, and helping others do the same. As I began to paint, I smiled, knowing that every stroke was another step forward in my own renaissance. Renaissance Women's Center. The sign gleamed in the morning sun as reporters gathered outside our newly renovated building. 6 months of hard work had transformed the warehouse into something extraordinary. Ms. Lillian, a journalist waved her microphone. Your story has inspired thousands. Did you expect this response when you first picked up your paintbrush again? Before I could answer, Ruby appeared at my side. Let's save the questions for the press conference inside. We have a ribbon to cut. The main gallery space buzzed with energy. My paintings lined the walls. The motherbird, the phoenix, and dozens more that told my story. But it was the community spaces that made me proudest. Art studios, counseling rooms, and a career center already booked solid for months. Mom? I turned to find Easton standing awkwardly by the entrance, holding something wrapped in brown paper. You came, I said, surprised. He hadn't confirmed for the opening. Alone, he added quickly. Andrea and we're taking a break. Before I could respond, a local news crew approached. Could we get an interview with both of you? The mother-son story behind this project is fascinating. Easton shifted uncomfortably. I don't deserve to be part of this story. Actually, I said, maybe you do. Our story might help others recognize toxic relationships before they lose themselves. The reporter positioned us near my motherbird painting. So, Easton, how does it feel seeing your mother's success? Honestly? He glanced at me, ashamed and proud. I was so caught up in someone else's vision of success that I forgot to see the strength that was right in front of me. And the breaking point? The reporter pressed. Finding out my girlfriend had been secretly recording my mother's embarrassing behavior to mock online. His voice cracked. She thought it was funny. I finally saw it was cruel. The reporter turned to me. And you had no idea about these recordings? Actually, I smiled sadly. They're part of the portfolio I showed him. Sometimes people reveal their true selves when they think no one's watching. After the interview, Easton handed me the wrapped package. I found this in Andrea's phone. She'd been planning to use it to humiliate you at some charity gala. Inside was a canvas print of me from months ago, crying in my old kitchen while packing boxes. Instead of shame, I felt triumph. This is perfect, I declared, immediately hanging it among my other works. Every story needs a turning point. The day flew by in a whirlwind of interviews, tours, and emotional conversations with women sharing their own stories. By evening, only a few stragglers remained, including a young mother clutching a sketchbook. I haven't drawn since my daughter was born, she admitted. My husband says it's selfish to want time for art. I used to believe that too, I said, leading her to our studio space. Let's prove him wrong. Ruby joined us, carrying enrollment forms. First class is on the house, she winked. As the woman began sketching, tears rolling down her cheeks, Easton touched my arm. Mom, there's something else you should know. He looked nervous. Andrea's been telling people you're mentally unstable, that this whole center is some kind of breakdown. She's trying to get her father's law firm involved. Let her, Ruby snapped, overhearing. We've got hundreds of women ready to testify about how this place changed their lives. Plus, the media loves Lillian's story. It's not just that, Easton continued. She's been spreading rumors about the center's finances, suggesting fraud. A commotion at the entrance cut him off. Andrea stormed in, designer heels clicking against our new hardwood floors. How dare you turn him against me, she shrieked, pointing at me. All this attention, this fake empowerment nonsense, it's pathetic. The young mother with the sketchbook stood up. Mom, I think you need to leave. Oh, shut up, Andrea snapped. You're all just sad, desperate. Security, Ruby called calmly into her phone. Main gallery, please. Andrea's face contorted. You'll be hearing from my father's lawyers. I'll make sure everyone knows what a fraud you are. Actually, Easton stepped forward, phone recording. I think you've done enough talking. As security escorted a screaming Andrea out, I turned to the young mother, who looked shaken. And that, I said, picking up a brush, is exactly why we built this place. Shall we paint? She smiled, wiping her eyes. Yes, please. Later, watching her create her first piece in years, I realized something profound. My revenge hadn't been in exposing Andrea, or even in my own success. It was in creating the space where other women could reclaim their power, one brushstroke at a time. Easton stayed until closing, helping clean up paint supplies and listening to women's stories. With each one, I saw understanding dawn in his eyes, the same understanding that had set me free. Turn on the news. Ruby's voice blasted through my phone early Monday morning. Channel 7 now. I fumbled for my remote, nearly spilling my coffee. The screen flickered to life, showing Andrea being escorted from her father's law firm in handcuffs. Hi, allegations of embezzlement and fraud, the reporter announced. Sources say Andrea Murray had been siphoning funds from multiple client accounts, including several non-profit organizations. The investigation began after suspicious activity was noticed in accounts belonging to... My phone buzzed with another call. Easton. I switched to speaker. Mum, are you watching? I am. Are you okay? She tried to frame me. His voice shook. Used my passwords to transfer money. If I hadn't found those documents on her laptop... Wait, I sat up straighter. You're the one who turned her in. After I saw what she was planning for your center, yeah, I couldn't let her hurt anyone else. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ruby still in her pajamas, tablet in hand. It's everywhere, she announced, striding in. Social media's exploding. Andrea's father just resigned from his firm. And look at this. She thrust the tablet at me. On screen was Andrea's private Instagram account. Leaked screenshots showing years of manipulative behavior, including her plans to discredit me and the Renaissance Center. The karma is absolutely delicious, Ruby grinned. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. Women from the center were sharing their stories, defending our work. Local businesses were reaching out about partnerships. 3 more news stations wanted interviews. Mum? Easton was still on speaker. Can I come over? There's something I need to show you." 30 minutes later, he arrived carrying a familiar leather portfolio, the one I'd given him months ago. "I've been adding to it," he said, opening it on my kitchen table. "Everything Andrea did, everything I should have seen sooner, but also this." He pulled out a stack of papers, applications to local engineering firms, lease agreements for an apartment nearby, and a volunteer registration form for the Renaissance Center. "I'm not taking her father's job offer," he declared. "I want to build something meaningful, like you did, and—" he hesitated. "I want to help other people avoid what happened to us." Ruby wiped her eyes, not even trying to hide her tears. "I'll get the coffee started. We've got a lot to discuss." My phone rang again, the local newspaper. "Ms. Lillian, we're running a feature on Andrea Murray's downfall and its connection to your center. Would you care to comment?" I looked at Easton, who nodded encouragingly. "Actually," I said, "I would, but not about Andrea. I'd rather talk about recognition, recognizing your worth, recognizing toxic relationships, and recognizing when it's time to stand up for yourself and others." The interview lasted an hour. By the end, the reporter was asking about our programs and how people could support the center. "One last question," she said. "What would you say to Andrea now?" "Thank you," I replied without hesitation. "Sometimes our greatest adversaries become our greatest catalysts for change." After hanging up, I found Easton and Ruby had spread the volunteer forms across the table, planning new programs for the center. "We could start a support group," Easton suggested, "for people recovering from manipulative relationships. I could share my experience." "And we've got that empty office upstairs," Ruby added. "Perfect for counseling sessions." My phone pinged with a news alert. Andrea Murray faces additional charges, cyberbullying and harassment evidence surfaces. "Mum?" Easton looked up from the papers. "Are you okay?" I walked to my easel, where a new painting was taking shape, a garden growing through broken concrete. "I'm better than okay," I replied, picking up my brush. "For the first time in my life, everything's exactly as it should be." Ruby raised her coffee mug. "To karma." "To new beginnings," Easton added. "To truth," I said, making the first stroke on my canvas. "It always finds its way to the surface." As I painted, Easton and Ruby continued planning, their voices filled with purpose and possibility. Outside, reporters were probably still camped out, waiting for comments about Andrea's arrest. But in here, in this space filled with art and hope and healing, none of that mattered. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from the young mother who'd been at our opening. "Just signed my first art commission. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to reclaim your dreams." I smiled, adding another stroke to my painting. Sometimes the best revenge isn't watching your enemies fall. It's rising so high that their actions become nothing more than footnotes in your success story. "She's asking to see you," Easton said, pacing my studio at the center. "Andrea, her lawyer says she wants to apologize." I set down my paintbrush, studying my son's troubled face. 2 months had passed since Andrea's arrest, and the media frenzy had finally started to die down. "And what do you think about that?" I asked. "I think she's manipulating again." He stopped pacing, running his hands through his hair. "The sentencing is next week. She's probably hoping for character statements to reduce her jail time." Ruby burst through the door, waving a newspaper. "Have you seen this? Andrea's father is claiming she has a personality disorder, trying to get her charges reduced." "Of course he is," I sighed, turning back to my canvas, a woman breaking free from chains. "What do you think, Ruby? Should I meet with her?" "Only if you're recording every second of it," Ruby declared, "and I'm coming with you." The meeting was arranged for the next day in Andrea's lawyer's office. She sat across the conference table, designer clothes, replaced by a simple blouse and skirt, makeup minimal. She looked younger, almost vulnerable. "Lillian," she began, voice trembling, "I'm so sorry for everything." "Are you sorry for what you did or sorry you got caught?" Ruby asked sharply. Andrea's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Murray has prepared a statement. No statements, I interrupted. Just truth. That's all I'm interested in. Andrea's perfectly crafted facade cracked. Truth? Fine, I was jealous. You had everything I wanted. Respect, love, purpose. I thought if I could prove you were pathetic, it would make me feel better. And did it? No. Tears spilled down her cheeks. It made me worse, meaner, more desperate. When I saw your center helping other women, I couldn't stand it. Their happiness felt like a personal attack, so you tried to destroy it. Yes. She wiped her eyes. But you just kept succeeding. Every attack made you stronger. And now, she gestured helplessly at her surroundings. Now you're facing jail time, I finished. And you want my help to avoid it. I want a chance to change, she whispered, like you did. I pulled out an envelope I'd prepared, sliding it across the table. Read it. Andrea's hands shook as she opened the letter. Dear Andrea, I'm willing to speak at your sentencing, but not to request leniency. Instead, I'll tell the truth about your actions, their impact, and what I believe you need. You need consequences. You need time to reflect. Most importantly, you need to understand that true strength isn't about tearing others down. If you're serious about changing, here's my offer. While you serve your time, take classes, get counseling, write down your story, not as a victim, but as someone who chose the wrong path and wants to find a better one. When you're released, if you've done the work, there will be a place for you at the Renaissance Center. Not as a client, but as a cautionary tale, and eventually, perhaps, as proof that people can change. The choice is yours. Lillian. Andrea stared at the letter for a long moment. You'd really give me a chance? After everything? Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, I said, standing. But first, they need to face what they've torn down. Outside the office, Ruby grabbed my arm. Are you sure about this? No, I admitted, but redemption has to start somewhere. My phone buzzed. A text from Easton. How did it go? Come to the center, I replied. There's something I need to show you. An hour later, Easton stood in our newest exhibition space, surrounded by artwork created by women from our programs. In the center was my latest piece, a mirror cracked into pieces, each shard reflecting a different aspect of healing. Andrea asked for help, I told him. I offered her a path, not a pardon. You're a better person than me, he said quietly. I don't know if I can forgive her. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, I replied, touching the mirror's frame. It's about choosing your future. Ruby appeared with coffee and forms for our newest program, Breaking Free, Recovery from Toxic Relationships. Speaking of futures, she smiled, we've got 20 women signed up already. Easton picked up a brush from my easel. Need any help with the beginner classes? Always, I said, watching my son dip the brush in paint, making his first tentative stroke on a blank canvas. Sometimes confronting your demons isn't about winning or losing. It's about standing firm in your truth and offering others the chance to find theirs. As I watched Easton paint, I realized that healing, like art, is never really finished. It just keeps evolving, one brushstroke at a time. The gallery buzzed with excitement as guests moved between the artworks, each piece telling a story of transformation. My original portfolio lay open in a glass case, a reminder of where this journey began. Mom, Easton called from across the room. They're ready for the ceremony. I made my way through the crowd, pausing briefly to squeeze Ruby's hand. She was crying already, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Don't you dare make me cry too, I warned. I still have to give a speech. The Renaissance Center's first graduation ceremony was about to begin. 28 women stood ready to receive their certificates, some in art, others in business development or counseling. Each had their own story of breaking free and finding strength. Before we begin, I addressed the crowd, I want to share something that arrived this morning. I opened a letter postmarked from the State Correctional Facility. Dear Lillian, today marks 6 months of my sentence. I've completed the counseling programs you suggested and started teaching an art therapy class here. The other inmates call me the cautionary tale. I understand now what you meant about facing what I've torn down. Every day I see the damage toxic behavior causes. Every day I choose to be different. Thank you for showing me that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reconstruction. Andrea, murmurs rippled through the audience. I continued. This center was born from pain, but it grew through hope. Each woman graduating today has faced their own Andrea, whether it was another person, society's expectations, or their own self-doubt. The graduates stood straighter, many holding hands. But more importantly, I gestured to Easton, who stepped forward with a stack of envelopes. Each graduate is leaving with something crucial, a future. Easton began distributing the envelopes. Inside, you'll find job offers, gallery contracts, or small business loans, whatever matches your new path. The Renaissance Center isn't just about healing the past, it's about building tomorrow. Ruby joined us, carrying a covered canvas. We have one more surprise. Lillian, would you do the honors? I unveiled the painting, a collaborative piece created by all 28 graduates, with spaces left blank around the edges. This mural will hang in our entrance, I explained. Each new graduate will add their own mark, creating an ever-growing testament to transformation. The first graduate approached the podium, tears streaming down her face. I was that young mother with the sketchbook, she said. Now I'm opening my own gallery. One by one, they shared their stories. A former corporate lawyer who'd lost herself in others' expectations. A grandmother finally pursuing her dreams after raising everyone else's children. A young woman who'd escaped an abusive relationship. Easton stepped up to the microphone. When my mother first showed me her portfolio, I thought she was trying to make me feel guilty. Instead, she was showing me how to be brave. He turned to me, holding out a small wrapped package. This is from all of us. Inside was a new portfolio case, but instead of being filled with evidence of sacrifice, it contained letters. Hundreds of them, from women whose lives had been touched by the center. Read the last one, Ruby whispered. I opened it to find Easton's handwriting. Dear Mom, you taught me that true strength isn't in holding on, but in knowing when to let go. When you walked away, you showed me how to walk towards something better. I'm proud to be part of this center's story. I'm prouder to be your son. Love, Easton. The room erupted in applause as I hugged him, both of us crying now. Okay, enough tears, Ruby announced. We've got futures to celebrate. As the graduates mingled with potential employers and gallery owners, I stood before the collaborative mural. Each piece reflected its creator's journey. Broken chains, blooming flowers, birds taking flight. Ready to add your piece? Easton asked, offering me a brush. I dipped it in paint, adding my contribution, a simple open door with light streaming through. Perfect, Ruby nodded. Now, about expanding to a second location. Already planning ahead? I laughed. Always, she grinned. The waiting list keeps growing. I looked around at my son teaching art to children of our graduates, at Ruby organizing the next phase of our growth, at the women who'd become not just success stories, but family. This was more than revenge or redemption. This was revolution, quiet, powerful, unstoppable. One canvas, one woman, one truth at a time. I picked up my brush again. There was still space on the mural, still stories to be told, still lives to be transformed. And this time, I wasn't walking away from anything. I was walking toward everything.
I used to believe that love was built on trust, like a house with a solid foundation. Now I know better. Sometimes the prettiest houses hide the deepest cracks. My name is Georgia, and 6 months ago, I thought I had it all. A loving husband, a beautiful home in Boston's suburbs, and the kind of comfortable life that made my college friends joke about how I'd won at adulting. Mark and I had been married for 5 years, and every morning started the same way. Him bringing me coffee in bed, kissing my forehead, and asking about my plans for the day. That particular morning seemed no different. "You're going to be late for your meeting," I said, watching Mark fumble with his tie in front of our bedroom mirror. He always struggled with the Windsor knot. "Here, let me." I climbed out of bed, still in my silk pajamas, and fixed his tie with practiced ease. He smelled like that expensive cologne I'd gotten him for Christmas. "What would I do without you?" He pulled me close, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. "Probably show up to work looking like a mess." I straightened his collar, admiring how handsome he looked in his tailored suit. Everything changed that evening. I was reviewing some client portfolios at my financial planning firm when Mark called, his voice tight with worry. "Georgia, I need to talk to you about Mom." I sat up straighter in my office chair. "Is everything okay? Can you come home early? It's serious." The drive home felt endless. When I arrived, Mark was pacing our living room, running his hands through his dark hair, something he only did when truly stressed. "Mom needs surgery," he blurted out before I could even set down my purse. "It's her heart. The doctors say it's urgent and her insurance won't cover all of it." "How much?" I asked, my stomach already nodding. 200,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's our entire savings. The money we were saving for the house down payment." I know, Mark's voice cracked. "But it's my mom, Georgia. She raised me alone after Dad died. I can't just..." I reached for his hand. "Hey, look at me. We'll figure this out. Family comes first, right?" He pulled me into a tight hug. "I love you so much. I'll pay you back every penny, I promise." Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. The way he avoided eye contact when discussing the hospital details, how he kept changing the subject when I asked about visiting Susan, the mysterious phone calls he'd take outside. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? 2 weeks after we transferred the money, I was having lunch with my friend Zariah at our usual spot near my office. "How's Susan doing?" she asked, stirring her iced tea. "The surgery must have been scary." "She's recovering," I said, picking at my salad. "Mark says she needs rest, so we're giving her space." Zariah's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. "That's weird. I could have sworn I saw her comment on Lisa's Instagram post yesterday. Something about spa recommendations." "What?" My fork clattered against the plate. "Yeah, she was asking about that new luxury resort that opened in the Berkshires. The one with the $1,000 a night rooms?" My hands felt cold suddenly. "Are you sure it was her? Unless there's another Susan Blake who posts photos of herself in designer clothes and calls Mark my precious boy in every other comment." The room seemed to tilt sideways. I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling as I opened Instagram. There it was. Susan's profile public and active. No hospital gowns, no surgery recovery posts. Instead, I found selfies at high-end restaurants, shopping bags from luxury brands, and comments about upcoming spa treatments. "Georgia," Zariah's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay? You've gone pale." I stood up so abruptly my chair scraped against the floor, drawing looks from nearby diners. "I have to go." "What's wrong?" I grabbed my purse, nearly knocking over my water glass. "I need to check something." As I rushed out of the restaurant, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Working late tonight, don't wait up. Love you." Another lie, another crack in our perfect little house. My hands shook as I started my car. The truth was right there, screaming at me from every perfectly filtered photo on Susan's Instagram. There was no surgery, no medical emergency, just my life savings funding my mother-in-law's luxurious lifestyle, while my husband played me for a fool. And I was done being fooled. I sat in my parked car outside our house for nearly an hour, scrolling through Susan's social media feed until my eyes burned. Each swipe revealed another betrayal. Designer handbags, spa treatments, luxury dinners. $200,000 of our money, spent on pampering instead of procedures. My phone rang, making me jump. Zariah's name flashed on the screen. "Georgia, you need to see this." Her voice was tight. "Susan just posted a story from the Golden Lotus Resort." "The what?" "That new ultra-luxury spa in the Berkshires. Georgia, Mark is tagged in it." My fingers felt numb as I opened Instagram again. There it was, a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking, Mark's hand visible with his distinctive silver watch, the one I'd given him for our anniversary. "He told me he was working late," I whispered. "That lying piece of—" Zariah caught herself. "What are you going to do?" I watched the boomerang loop again and again. Clink, sparkle, repeat. "I'm going to pay them a visit. Want me to come with you?" "No." I started the car. "This is something I need to do alone." "At least let me book you a room there. My company has a corporate account." 20 minutes later, I was home throwing clothes into an overnight bag. My hands were steady now, anger replacing shock. I walked into our closet and pulled out the red dress Mark loved, the one I'd worn on our first date. Revenge, I decided, should look good. My phone buzzed with a text from Stefan, my boss. "Taking tomorrow off? Everything okay?" I hadn't even realized I'd sent him an email requesting leave. "Family emergency," I replied. "The real kind, not the fake kind that costs $200K. Whatever you need, but Georgia, be careful." In the kitchen, I found the receipt from our money transfer, tucked away in Mark's important documents folder. The same folder that should have contained medical bills, insurance claims, hospital paperwork. Instead, there were only spa brochures and travel magazines. My phone pinged with another Instagram notification. Susan posting again, "Nothing better than quality time with my boy. Shah blessed na family first luxury life." The timestamp showed it was posted 2 minutes ago. They were still there. I was halfway to the Berkshires when Zariah called again. "Your room's confirmed. I got you one with a view of the main pool area. That's where most guests hang out." "Thanks, I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. But please record whatever goes down. For legal purposes, of course." "Of course." A hint of a smile touched my lips for the first time that day. The Golden Lotus Resort rose from the countryside like a modern castle, all glass and sleek lines. The valet took my car with a practiced smile, probably wondering why I looked ready to commit murder in a cocktail dress. At the front desk, a polished young woman named Amy checked me in. "Will you be joining us for the sunset yoga session?" she asked, handing me my key card. "Actually," I leaned in conspiratorially, "I heard Susan Blake is staying here. We're old friends, and I'd love to surprise her." Amy's professional smile flickered. "Oh yes, Mrs. Blake. She's been quite memorable. She and her son are usually at the infinity pool this time of day." Perfect. My room was on the 4th floor with a clear view of the pool area, just as Zariah promised. I stood at the window, scanning the crowd of wealthy loungers until I spotted them. Susan, holding court in a cabana, wearing what looked like a new designer swimsuit. And Mark, my faithful husband who was working late, lounging beside her with a drink in his hand. I watched them laugh together, my hands gripping the window frame until my knuckles turned white. All those nights I'd eaten dinner alone, believing he was at the office. All those times I'd defended him to my friends when he missed their parties. All those dreams we'd planned together, now drowning in that infinity pool. My phone buzzed, a text from Mark. "Stuck in meetings. Miss you." I took a deep breath and opened my suitcase. The red dress came out first, followed by my makeup bag. If I was going to blow up my marriage, I was going to do it looking absolutely fantastic. In the bathroom mirror, I practiced my smile, the kind that promises consequences. "Hello, darling," I whispered to my reflection. "Surprise." My hands were steady as I applied my lipstick, the same shade of red as my dress, the same shade as the rage burning through my veins. Time to crash their little party. The infinity pool sparkled in the late afternoon sun as I made my way across the deck. Guests lounged on $1,000 chairs, sipping $100 cocktails, living their best lives. In her cabana, Susan was holding court like a queen, wearing oversized sunglasses that probably cost more than my car payment. My heels clicked against the marble tiles. Click, 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 a countdown to destruction. And then I told the massage therapist, Susan was saying, that if she couldn't handle my requests, I'd speak to management about, "Hello, darling." I stepped into the shade of their cabana. Surprise. Mark choked on his drink. "Georgia? What are you doing here?" I smiled, all teeth. Well, when I heard about this amazing resort, I just had to see it for myself, especially after that generous donation we made to your mother's medical care. Susan pushed her sunglasses up onto her forehead. Georgia, dear, what a pleasant surprise, isn't it? I perched on the edge of a lounger, crossing my legs slowly. I have to say, Susan, you look remarkable for someone who just had heart surgery. What was it, 2 weeks ago? The color drained from Mark's face. Honey, let me explain. Oh, please do. I pulled out my phone. Explain how your mother needed emergency surgery, but somehow managed to post 15 poolside selfies last week. Explain how our life savings went to medical bills, yet here she is wearing a $5,000 swimsuit. A couple in the next cabana stopped their conversation to listen. This is hardly the place, Mark started. Actually, this is exactly the place. I stood up, my voice carrying across the pool deck. This is where our money went, isn't it? Not to life-saving surgery, but to life-living luxury. How much was this cabana, Mark? 1,000 a day? 2? Susan sat up straighter, her perfectly manicured hands gripping her champagne glass. Now see here. No, you see here. I pulled up the bank transfer receipt on my phone. $200,000, our entire savings. Money we spent 5 years putting aside for our future, for the family we plan to start. More people were watching now. A woman nearby was not so subtly recording with her phone. I needed that money, Susan snapped, dropping her socialite act. Do you know how hard it is to maintain my lifestyle? Mark understands. He knows what his mother deserves. Mom, please. Mark reached for her arm. What you deserve? I laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. What about what your son deserves? What about his dreams, his future? I gave him everything. Susan's voice rose. I raised him alone. I sacrificed. You sacrificed nothing. I cut her off. And now you're making him sacrifice everything. His marriage, his integrity, his... Georgia, stop. Mark stood up, reaching for me. Let's talk about this privately. I stepped back. Like how you privately discussed spending our savings with your mother. Like how you privately decided to lie to your wife for weeks. A small crowd had gathered now. I recognized some faces from Mark's social media. Business associates, country club friends, people whose opinion he valued more than his own conscience. You don't understand, he pleaded. Your mother needed a reality check, not a blank check. I turned to address our audience. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Mark. Loving son, terrible husband, excellent liar. And Susan, the mother who never learned the difference between loving her child and destroying him. Susan stood up so fast her champagne sloshed over the glass. How dare you? Mark, are you going to let her speak to me this way? But Mark just stood there looking lost between his mother and his wife, between his past and what should have been his future. You know what the worst part is? I stepped closer to him, close enough to smell that familiar cologne. I would have helped your mother if she really needed it. I would have found a way. But you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. You chose lies over love. Georgia, please. His voice cracked. I packed a bag before I came here. I reached into my purse and pulled out my house key. You can keep the house. After all, you'll need somewhere to live when your mother's spending catches up with her. I dropped the key in his champagne glass. It sank to the bottom with a soft clink. Goodbye, Mark. I hope the view from this infinity pool was worth our infinity. As I walked away, head high in my red dress, I heard Susan's shrill voice. Mark, don't just stand there. Do something. But there was nothing left to do. The truth was out, sparkling in the sunlight like the surface of that beautiful, expensive pool. And sometimes the truth is the best revenge of all. Behind me, someone started clapping. I made it halfway across the pool deck before Mark caught up with me, his bare feet slapping against the marble tiles. Georgia, wait! He grabbed my arm. You're making a scene. Making a scene? I yanked my arm free. You stole our future, and you're worried about a scene? More phones were out now, recording. A woman in designer sunglasses whispered to her companion, Isn't that Mark from the country club board? I can explain everything, he said, lowering his voice. Mom's been struggling since Dad died. She needed help maintaining her lifestyle. Maintaining her lifestyle? I laughed. Do you hear yourself? Susan appeared behind him, clutching her silk cover-up around her shoulders like armor. This is all a misunderstanding, dear. Mark was simply helping me through a difficult time. A difficult time? I pulled up her Instagram feed. Here's you at the Ritz last week, and here's your new Hermes bag. Oh, and my personal favorite, you getting a gold facial while my savings paid for it. Those treatments are necessary for my well-being, Susan sniffed. Mark understands that. Your well-being? I turned to the growing crowd. Did you all hear that? $200,000 for her well-being. Not for heart surgery, not for medical bills, for facials and handbags. A man in expensive swim trunks cleared his throat. Mark, isn't that the money you said you needed for your mother's emergency operation? When you asked to delay your contribution to the club's charity fund? Mark's face went pale. Richard, I can explain. Oh, this is getting better by the minute, I said. So you didn't just lie to me, you lied to everyone. Susan stepped forward, her perfectly painted face twisted with anger. Now, see here, you ungrateful little... Ungrateful? I cut her off. For what? For watching you spend my life savings? For believing my husband when he said his mother was dying? I never said she was dying, Mark protested weakly. No, you just implied it while you watched me empty our account. While you watched me cancel our plans for a family, for a home, for everything we dreamed about. A woman near the bar spoke up. Susan, didn't you just book the presidential suite for next month's spa retreat? Susan's face flushed. That's none of your business, Patricia. Actually, Patricia continued, I believe you invited half the club ladies. Said Mark had given you a special gift to celebrate your... What was it? Oh yes, your miraculous recovery. The whispers grew louder. Mark looked like he might be sick. Mom, he said, tell me you didn't. Of course I did. Susan's voice rose hysterically. I deserve to celebrate. After everything I've been through, raising you alone. Stop, Mark's voice cracked. Just stop. But darling, you told me you needed help with medical bills. You showed me fake documents. You made me lie to my wife, to my friends, to everyone. Susan's face hardened. I needed that money more than she did, more than your little house fund. I'm your mother. And I'm his wife, I stepped closer to her. Or at least I was, until you decided your spa treatments were more important than your son's marriage. He chose to help me. Susan jabbed a finger at my chest. He knows where his loyalty should lie. Mom! Mark grabbed her hand. That's enough. But Susan was on a roll now, her voice carrying across the silent pool deck. You think you can turn him against me? I made him everything he is. Without me, he'd be nothing. You deserve to be arrested for fraud, a new voice cut in. We all turned to see Richard, the club member, hanging up his phone. I've just spoken to my lawyer. Using false medical documents to obtain money? That's a criminal offense. Susan's face went from red to white. You wouldn't dare. Actually, I pulled out my phone. I have copies of everything. The fake medical bills, the bank transfers, the Instagram posts proving where the money really went. I'm sure the police would find it fascinating. Mark! Susan turned to her son. Tell them they can't do this. But Mark just stood there looking at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. How could you? He whispered. How could you make me do this? Because she knew you would, I said softly. Because she knew you'd never say no to her, no matter who it hurt, even yourself. The silence around the pool was deafening. Susan looked from face to face, finding no allies among her society friends. Even her son couldn't meet her eyes. Finally, she straightened her shoulders, adjusted her designer sunglasses, and said in a voice dripping with venom, Well, I hope you're all happy. You've ruined everything. As she stormed off toward the resort, her silk cover-up fluttering behind her like a surrender flag, I heard someone mutter, No, Susan, you did that all by yourself. The aftermath of Susan's exit felt like the calm after a storm. People began to drift away from the pool area, their whispers following them like ripples in the water. Mark stood frozen, still staring after his mother. "Georgia," he finally said, his voice hollow. "I never meant—" "Save it." I held up my hand. "You meant every bit of it. You just never meant to get caught." Richard, the club member, cleared his throat. "Mark, I think we need to discuss your position on the board. This kind of scandal—" "Scandal?" A sharp laugh cut through the air. Patricia from the bar was back, phone in hand. "It's already trending on local social media. Spa scam is picking up steam." Mark's face crumpled. "Please, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Patricia continued, scrolling through her phone. "Your mother's been bragging about her luxury lifestyle in our group chat for weeks, always talking about how her devoted son makes it all possible. Guess we know where the money came from now." More club members gathered around, their previous deference to Mark evaporating like pool water in the sun. "Didn't you just join that new private equity firm?" someone asked. "The one that handles trust funds?" "I wonder if they know about your creative financing," another added. Mark's phone started buzzing incessantly. He pulled it out, his hands shaking. "My partners are calling." "Better answer it," I said. "I'm sure they'd love to hear how you handle other people's money." He looked at me pleadingly. "Georgia, please, we can fix this. I'll get the money back." "How?" I stepped closer. "By stealing from someone else? By finding another lie to tell? I'll sell my car, my watches." "Your mother's new handbags?" I suggested sweetly. "Her spa memberships?" Richard's phone chimed. He glanced at it and winced. "Mark, the club president wants an emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning." "I can't," Mark said desperately. "I have a client meeting." "Had a client meeting," Patricia corrected, still scrolling. "According to Twitter, your firm's managing partner is re-evaluating all current relationships." That was posted 2 minutes ago. The color drained from Mark's face. His phone buzzed again, this time with a text. I caught a glimpse of the screen. It was Susan. "Mother needs you?" I asked, my voice dripping with fake concern. He opened the message, then let out a bitter laugh. "She wants to know if I can book her a car service. The resort staff is being difficult about her room charges." Shocking. I adjusted my purse strap. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure something out. You always do, right? For Mom?" "Georgia." He reached for me again, but I stepped back. "Don't." My voice was steady now. "Don't touch me. Don't call me. Don't try to explain. Just don't. But I love you." "No." I shook my head. "You love the idea of me, the supportive wife who never questioned you, the woman who trusted you enough to hand over her future. That person's gone now." More phones were chiming around the pool. The story was spreading faster than wildfire in a drought. "Your mother's trending," Patricia announced. Someone dug up her social media history, all those posts about her medical treatments next to pictures of her shopping sprees. Not a good look. Mark's phone buzzed yet again. This time when he looked at it, he actually swayed on his feet. "The firm," he whispered. They're suspending me, pending investigation." "Well," I said, smoothing down my red dress, "I guess karma doesn't need an infinity pool to make a splash." A few people actually applauded at that. Mark looked around wildly, seeing nothing but judgment and camera phones where there used to be respect and admiration. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "Maybe ask your mother. She seems to have all the answers, except how to pay her own bills." I turned to leave, but stopped after a few steps. Looking back over my shoulder, I delivered one final blow. "You know what's funny? If you'd just been honest from the start, I would have helped. We could have found a way to support your mother that didn't involve fraud. But you chose lies over love. And now?" I gestured at the crowd of former friends recording his downfall. "Now you get to live with that choice, in public." As I walked away, head high in my red dress, I heard Patricia say, "Oh, look, Mark's messy mother is trending now, too." The last thing I saw before entering the resort was Mark, standing alone by the infinity pool, watching his carefully constructed life dissolve into nothing, just like our savings, just like our marriage, just like his mother's fake medical emergency. Sometimes karma doesn't just come around. Sometimes it comes with receipts. The drive home from the Berkshires felt surreal. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, messages from friends who'd seen the viral videos, news alerts about Mark's firm launching an investigation, and endless texts from Zariah demanding details. I ignored them all until I saw Stefan's name pop up. "Are you okay?" his message read. "Just saw what happened. The videos are everywhere." I pulled into a rest stop and called him. "I'm fine," I said when he answered. "Well, not fine, but—" "Come to the office," he said. "We need to talk about your finances." "Stefan, it's almost 8. I'm still here, and you shouldn't be alone right now." 40 minutes later, I was sitting in his office, still wearing my red dress, while he poured us both a drink. "So," he said, handing me a glass of whiskey, "want to tell me how my best financial planner missed the signs of fraud in her own account?" "Because I trusted him." I took a long sip. "Stupid, right? Human." He sat on the edge of his desk. "But now we need to be strategic. I've already called my friend at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit." I nearly choked on my drink. "The FBI? Georgia, they used fake medical documents to commit fraud. That's federal territory." He pulled out a file. "And I've been doing some digging. Your mother-in-law has a history of this." He spread out papers across his desk, credit card statements, loan applications, bank records. 3 ex-husbands, he said, pointing to different documents. Each one mysteriously emptied their accounts before the divorce. And look at this. 2 years ago, she convinced her brother to mortgage his house for her cancer treatments. Let me guess. She didn't have cancer. She had a spa membership in Switzerland. He shook his head. The brother lost his house. My phone buzzed again. Mark's face appeared on the screen. "Don't answer," Stefan said. "Let everything go through lawyers from now on." "I don't have a lawyer." "Yes, you do." He handed me a business card. "Maria's the best divorce attorney in Boston. She's expecting your call tomorrow." I stared at the card, reality finally hitting me. "I'm getting divorced." "You're getting justice," he corrected. "And your money back if I have anything to say about it." My phone lit up with another notification. Zariah had sent a link to a news article. "Financial firm suspends executive amid fraud allegations." "It's all falling apart for him," I whispered. "Good." Stefan's voice was hard. "He deserves it. Both of them do." A knock at the office door made us both jump. It was the night security guard. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman in the lobby insisting on seeing Miss Georgia. Says she's her mother-in-law." "Susan's here?" I stood up so fast I almost spilled my drink. "Want me to send her away?" the guard asked. I looked at Stefan, who nodded slightly. "No," I said. "Send her up." 5 minutes later, Susan swept into the office. Her designer outfit was wrinkled, her makeup smeared. "Well," she said, dropping into a chair uninvited, "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed my son's life." "Pretty sure you did that yourself," Stefan said, moving to stand beside me. "And who are you?" she snapped. "Someone who's already reported you to the FBI." Susan's face went pale. The FBI? Wire fraud, medical documentation fraud, interstate conspiracy." He ticked off points on his fingers. "Should I continue?" "This is ridiculous." She turned to me. "Georgia, you can't let them do this. Think about Mark." "I am thinking about Mark," I said quietly. "I'm thinking about how you trained him to destroy his life to fund yours." "I gave him everything." "You took everything," I corrected. "And now you've lost everything." She stood up, straightening her Gucci blazer. "This isn't over." "Actually," Stefan held up his phone, "it is. The FBI just confirmed they're opening an investigation. I'd stay in town if I were you." Susan's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand. I need that lifestyle. I deserve—" "Get out," I said, my voice steady. "Get out before I call security again." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to deflate. Without another word, she turned and left, her designer heels clicking away down the hallway. "You okay?" Stefan asked softly. I looked at him, at the scattered evidence of Susan's lifetime of fraud, at my wedding ring still gleaming on my finger. "No," I said, slipping off the ring, "but I will be." The ring made a satisfying ping as it landed in the trash can. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, FBI interviews, and viral videos. I'd moved in with Zariah temporarily, sleeping on her couch while my life reorganized itself into something recognizable. "Look at this," Zariah said one morning, sliding her tablet across the breakfast table. "Mark's firm officially fired him." I scanned the press release. Words like breach of trust and ethical violations jumped out at me. "That's not all," she continued, scrolling through her phone. "The country club revoked his membership, and 3 charity boards asked for his resignation. What about Susan?" "Oh, that's the best part. The FBI found evidence of at least 6 other fraud schemes. Turns out your mother-in-law's been scamming people for decades." My phone buzzed. Maria, my divorce attorney. "Georgia," she said when I answered, "we've received an interesting proposal from Mark's lawyer. He wants to meet. Says he has something important to discuss." An hour later, I sat in Maria's office, watching Mark fidget in the chair across from me. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing a wrinkled suit that used to fit better. "Thank you for meeting me," he said quietly. "Make it quick," Maria replied, her pen poised over her legal pad. Mark pulled out a folder. "I'm signing over everything. The house, the cars, my personal accounts, what's left of them, and this." He slid a check across the table. I looked at the amount and felt my breath catch. "This is $200,000, he finished, plus interest. I sold my watches, my golf club membership, everything of value. Mom's going to prison, Georgia. I can't change that, but I can try to fix what I did to you." "Mark, please," he held up his hand. "Let me finish. I've been in therapy this past week. Turns out being a pathological mama's boy isn't actually normal." He attempted a weak smile. "I destroyed something precious because I never learned to say no to her. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to have back what I stole." Maria examined the check. "This appears legitimate. We can have it verified within the hour." "It's real," Mark said. "It's all I have left, actually. Well, that and a bunch of viral videos of my public disgrace." "Those videos saved other people from being scammed," I said. "The FBI found 3 more families your mother was targeting." He winced. "I know. They interviewed me yesterday. I told them everything." He stood up slowly. "I'm moving to Seattle next week. Fresh start, entry-level position at a small firm. No trust funds or society connections this time. Just honest work." "Good," I said, surprising myself by meaning it. He paused at the door. "I really did love you, Georgia. I just loved my mother's approval more. I'm sorry it took losing everything to figure that out." After he left, Maria looked at me over her glasses. "Well, that was unexpected." "Is it wrong that I feel sorry for him?" "No," she said, starting to draw up the papers. "But it's better that you feel sorry for him from a distance." That evening, I met Stefan for dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. He'd been my rock through everything, helping the FBI build their case, connecting me with financial advisors to protect my restored savings. "Mark gave back the money," I told him as we settled into our booth. "I know." He smiled. I may have suggested to his new employer that restitution would look good on his record. "You found him the Seattle job?" "Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild," he said, then quickly added, "as long as that rebuilding happens 3,000 miles away from you." I laughed for what felt like the first time in weeks. "Thank you for everything." "Speaking of rebuilding," he slid a folder across the table. "The senior partner position is yours if you want it. The board was impressed with how you handled your own financial crisis. Said it showed integrity." "Stefan, just think about it," he said softly. "You're stronger than you know, Georgia. You turned a betrayal into justice, not just for yourself, but for others. That's the kind of leader we need." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Susan's face filled the screen, her mugshot this time, not a spa selfie. "Federal charges filed in multi-state fraud case," the headline read. "Socialite faces up to 20 years. "Karma really does come for everyone," I murmured. "Sometimes it just needs a little help," Stefan replied, raising his glass. "To new beginnings?" I clinked my glass against his, feeling something warm and hopeful unfurl in my chest. To new beginnings. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I truly believed in those words. The morning of Susan's sentencing, I sat in the federal courthouse, watching her world finally crumble. Gone were the designer clothes and spa-perfected skin. In their place was a woman in a plain gray suit, her roots showing through her expensive dye job. 15 years, Zariah whispered beside me as the judge read the sentence, plus full restitution to all victims. Susan turned to scan the courtroom, her eyes landing on me. For a moment, I saw the manipulative woman who'd destroyed her son's life to fund her own. Then her shoulders slumped, and she was just another convicted fraudster being led away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with their microphones. Ms. Georgia, how does it feel knowing your viral video led to uncovering decades of fraud? Do you have any comment about your ex-husband's new life in Seattle? I stepped up to the microphones, feeling Stefan's supportive presence behind me. The only comment I have is this. Trust should be earned, not exploited. My ex-mother-in-law didn't just steal money, she stole people's faith in their loved ones. That's the real crime here. Back at the office, my new corner office as senior partner, I found a package waiting on my desk. The return address was Seattle. Inside was a letter from Mark and a stack of cashier's checks. Georgia, the letter read, "These are for the other families my mother hurt. I've been working extra jobs to help make things right. My therapist says I can't fix the past, but I can choose who I am now. Thank you for showing me what real integrity looks like. Mark." "That's unexpected," Stefan said from my doorway. "People can surprise you." I looked up at him. "Sometimes in good ways." He stepped into the office, closing the door. "Speaking of surprises, remember that fraud prevention program you proposed? The one for helping families spot financial abuse? What about it?" "The board approved it, full funding." He grinned. "They want you to lead it." "Really? You're the perfect choice. Who better to teach people about financial manipulation than someone who exposed one of Boston's biggest fraud cases?" My phone buzzed. A text from Zariah with a link. "OMG, look at this." It was a video of Susan's old social media posts, edited together with clips from her trial. The caption read, "From spa days to prison days, how one woman's luxury lifestyle was built on lies." It had over 1 million views. "Still trending," Stefan noted, looking over my shoulder. "Your story really struck a nerve." It wasn't just my story. It was everyone's story who ever trusted the wrong person. I stood up, moving to the window. You know what the weird thing is? I'm actually grateful it happened. Grateful? It taught me what I'm capable of, standing up for myself, helping others, building something new. I turned to face him. "Speaking of which, would you like to get dinner tonight? Not as colleagues this time." His smile lit up his whole face. "I thought you'd never ask." That evening, over dinner at a small Italian restaurant, my phone buzzed one last time. It was an email from one of Susan's other victims, the brother who'd lost his house. "Thank you," it read. "Because of your testimony and the restitution order, I'm getting my home back. My kids will have their rooms again. You didn't just expose a fraud, you gave us back our future." I showed the email to Stefan. "See," he said softly. "Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better." To getting better, I raised my glass. "And to the woman who turned a betrayal into a blessing for others," he added. As our glasses clinked, I thought about trust and truth, about karma and consequences. I thought about the woman I was when this all started, believing in a perfect life built on lies. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and surprisingly happier. My phone buzzed again. Another victim thanking me for coming forward, then another, and another. "You've started a movement," Stefan observed. "People are finally talking about financial abuse within families." "Good," I said, "because that's how we prevent the next Susan. That's how we protect the next family." "And what about protecting your own happiness?" he asked, reaching across the table to take my hand. I looked at our intertwined fingers, at the space where my wedding ring used to be. That space didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like possibility. I think, I smiled, squeezing his hand, I'm already doing that. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead us to our greatest strength. Sometimes betrayal leads us to our truest path. And sometimes, when we're brave enough to face the truth, we find something better than the lies we once believed in. We find ourselves.
I always thought I had a good marriage until I heard my husband's voice floating through our kitchen window that evening. "You're better than her in every way," he was saying, his tone dripping with an affection I hadn't heard in years. "I can't wait to make you my wife. I'm Nadine," and that was the moment my world crumbled around me. The wine glass I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, shattering on our back patio. Through the window, I could see Colin and Danielle spring apart like guilty teenagers. My husband and my best friend, illuminated by our garden lights, looking at me with matching expressions of horror. "Nadine," Danielle's voice quavered. "We were just what?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Planning your wedding?" Earlier that evening, we'd hosted a dinner party, something we did every month. Colin had insisted on inviting Danielle, as always. Now I understood why. "You should go inside," Colin said, his face hardening into that familiar dismissive expression I'd grown to hate. "You're making a scene." "A scene?" I laughed, the sound harsh in my throat. "Like the scene you two have been making behind my back." Danielle stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hands raised in surrender. "Let me explain." "How long?" I demanded, stepping over the broken glass. "How long has this been going on?" Neither answered. Their silence told me everything. "Nadine, be reasonable," Colin said, using the same condescending tone he'd used last week when I'd told him about my business idea. "You know things haven't been working between us." "Things haven't been working," I repeated. "Is that what you tell yourself to justify sleeping with my best friend?" "You're always focused on these ridiculous business schemes," he shot back. "Playing entrepreneur when you should be focusing on our marriage. Danielle understands what a wife should be." The words hit like physical blows. For years, I'd watched him dismiss my dreams, belittle my ambitions. Every time I'd suggested starting my own company, he'd laughed it off. "Stick to what you know," he'd say, patting my hand like I was a child. "I understand what it takes to make a marriage work," Danielle added, her voice soft with fake sympathy. "Sometimes people just grow apart." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably my sister Adeline checking in after leaving the dinner party early. I ignored it, focusing instead on the way Colin's hand had found its way to Danielle's lower back, protective and possessive. "You know what's funny?" I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I actually felt guilty for boring you at dinner with my latest business proposal. I was going to apologize for talking too much about market research and property values." "Nobody wants to hear about that stuff at dinner, Nadine," Colin sighed. "It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing?" My voice rose. "You want to talk about embarrassing? How about the fact that my husband and best friend are planning their wedding while I'm still wearing my ring?" Inside the house, I could see our dinner guests starting to notice the commotion. Jayla, Colin's sister, was pressing her face against the window, confusion written across her features. "Keep your voice down," Colin hissed. "You're being hysterical." "Hysterical?" I stepped closer, my heel crunching on broken glass. "I'll show you hysterical." But instead of screaming or throwing things like they clearly expected, I simply pulled off my wedding ring and dropped it into Colin's favourite whiskey glass, still half full on the patio table. "Congratulations on your engagement," I said, my voice ice cold. "I hope you'll be very happy together." As I turned to walk away, Danielle called after me. "Nadine, wait, we never meant to hurt you." I spun back around. "You know what hurts the most, Danielle? Last month, when I confided in you about feeling distant from Colin, you told me to work harder on my marriage. Were you sleeping with him then, or did that come later?" Her silence was answer enough. "Nadine," Colin started, but I cut him off. "Don't worry about the dinner guests," I said, already heading for the door. "I'm sure you two can entertain them with stories about how I'm not good enough, how I'm just a dreamer who doesn't understand reality. That seems to be your specialty." As I walked through our house, soon to be just his house, I could hear the murmurs of our guests, see their shocked faces. But I didn't stop. I grabbed my car keys and my purse, and I walked out the front door with my head held high. It wasn't until I was in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, that I allowed myself to cry. My phone buzzed again, Adeline's name lighting up the screen. This time I answered it. "Aid?" My voice cracked. "I need a place to stay tonight." "You're not going back there," Adeline declared, pushing a steaming mug of tea across her kitchen counter. "You can stay here as long as you need." 3 days had passed since the dinner party and I'd barely slept. My phone was flooded with messages, some from concerned friends, others from Colin demanding I stop being dramatic and come home. "I have to go back eventually," I said, staring into my tea, "at least to get my things." "Then I'm coming with you." Adeline's tone left no room for argument. "We'll go when we know he's at work." But when we pulled up to the house later that morning, Colin's car was in the driveway, so was Danielle's. "Turn around," I said quickly, but Adeline was already parking. "No way," she said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "This is your house too. You have every right to be here." Inside, we found them in the living room, surrounded by boxes. Danielle froze when she saw me, a framed photo of our wedding day in her hands. "What are you doing?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "Packing up your things," Colin said, not meeting my eyes. "I thought it would be easier." "Easier for who?" Adeline cut in. "For you to move your girlfriend in faster?" "I'm trying to be considerate," he snapped. I laughed bitterly. Considerate would have been not sleeping with my best friend. "Former best friend," Danielle corrected quietly, and something in me snapped. "You're right," I said, snatching the wedding photo from her hands. "My best friend died the moment she decided to betray me." "Nadine," Colin sighed, using his reasonable voice, "we need to discuss the divorce settlement. I've already talked to my lawyer." "Of course you have," I interrupted. "Always efficient when it comes to getting what you want." I headed upstairs to our bedroom, now stripped of anything that made it ours. My clothes were already packed in boxes, my books stacked neatly beside them. As I started checking drawers to ensure nothing was missed, I found it, the letter from Mom. She'd written it before she died last year, separate letters for each of us kids. I'd never opened mine, too afraid of what final words she might have left me. With trembling hands, I broke the seal. "My dearest Nadine," it began. "I've watched you dim your light for others, especially Colin. Don't let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big or that you're not capable. You have my business sense and your father's determination. Use them both." Tears blurred my vision as I read on. "Remember when you were 10 and you set up that lemonade stand? You didn't just sell lemonade. You created different flavors, hired your sister to help, even convinced the neighbors to let you set up satellite stands in their yards. You made enough to buy that bike you wanted. That's who you are. Innovative, determined, unstoppable. Don't let anyone make you forget that." "What's that?" Colin's voice made me jump. He was standing in the doorway watching me. "Nothing that concerns you anymore." I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my pocket. "Look," he said, stepping closer. "I know you're hurt, but you have to understand. Danielle and we connect on a different level. She supports my goals, doesn't challenge everything like you do." "You mean she doesn't have any goals of her own?" I corrected him. "She's content living in your shadow." "See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're always pushing, always wanting more. It's exhausting." "You're right," I said, standing up straighter. "I do want more. I want a life where I'm valued, where my dreams matter. Thank you for showing me I'll never have that with you." Adeline appeared in the doorway. "The car's loaded with your boxes, ready to go?" I nodded, but Colin blocked the door. "We need to discuss the house. I think it's fair if—" "Fair?" Adeline scoffed. "Like how fair it was when you were screwing her best friend." "Get out of my way, Colin," I said quietly. "My lawyer will be in touch about the house and everything else." "Your lawyer?" He laughed. "Since when do you have a lawyer?" "Since I decided to stop letting you make all my decisions." I pushed past him, Mom's letter burning like a talisman in my pocket. As we drove away, Adeline glanced at me. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. I pulled out Mom's letter, running my fingers over her familiar handwriting. I think it's time I started that business I've been dreaming about. Really? Adeline's face lit up. What's the first step? I smiled, feeling stronger than I had in days. First, we call Valerie Duncan. Remember that successful real estate developer Mom used to work with? I think it's time I asked for some advice. The key to real estate isn't just buying and selling properties, Valerie said, spreading out a map of our town on her office desk. It's seeing potential where others don't. 2 weeks had passed since I'd left Colin, and I'd spent every day absorbing everything Valerie could teach me. She'd been my mother's colleague and friend, and when I called, she didn't hesitate to help. Look here, she pointed to a neglected area of town. Everyone's focused on the trendy downtown developments, but this neighborhood? It's a goldmine waiting to happen. That's where the old factory district is, I said, leaning closer. Exactly. And with the new transit line coming through, those properties are going to skyrocket in value. The door opened, and my father walked in, his face tight with concern. Nadine, what are you doing? Working, Dad, I replied, not looking up from the map. Valerie's helping me start my business. A business? He sighed heavily. Honey, you're going through a divorce. This isn't the time to make rash decisions. Wayne, Valerie interjected, your daughter has a natural talent for this, just like Sarah did. The mention of my mother made him pause. Sarah had years of experience. And I'm getting mine now, I cut in. I've already found 3 potential properties. With what money? He demanded. You're living with your sister. Actually, Valerie smiled, she's secured her first investor. Me. Dad's jaw dropped. You're investing in this? I am. And if you'd stop underestimating your daughter for 5 minutes, you might see what I see, what Sarah always saw. My phone buzzed. Another message from Colin. I ignored it. Show him the proposal, Valerie encouraged. I pulled out my laptop, opening the presentation I'd been working on. These factory buildings, they're perfect for conversion into mixed-use spaces. Apartments above, retail below. The neighborhood's already showing signs of revival, and with the right development, it could transform the whole area, Dad finished, his expression softening slightly. Your mother used to talk about this district. I know, I said quietly. I found her old notes in some of the boxes I brought from the house. Speaking of the house, Valerie interrupted. Stephen Barnes is here to discuss your divorce proceedings. Right on cue, Stephen walked in, briefcase in hand. Good news, Nadine. Given the circumstances of your separation, we're in a strong position to negotiate. I don't want to negotiate, I said firmly. I want to sell. Let Colin buy me out. I need the capital for my first property purchase. Are you sure? Dad asked. That house is full of memories I'd rather forget, I finished. It's time for a fresh start. Stephen nodded, making notes. I'll draft the papers. But there's something else you should know. Colin and Danielle have been looking at properties in the Heights district. My stomach clenched. The Heights was the most prestigious neighborhood in town, where all the old money families lived. Let me guess, I said bitterly. They want their dream home? They've made offers on several properties, Stephen confirmed. All rejected so far. The sellers there are particular about buyers. Valerie's eyes sparkled. You know what would be interesting? If someone with vision bought up some key properties in that area. For investment purposes, of course. I caught her meaning immediately. Of course, purely business. Nadine, Dad warned, don't let revenge drive your business decisions. It's not revenge, Dad. It's strategy. I turned back to the map. Besides, why shouldn't I invest in the Heights? The returns would help fund my factory district project. Now you're thinking like a developer, Valerie grinned. Stephen, draw up the papers for our first property purchase. The old Wilson factory on 3rd Street. As Stephen worked, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Danielle. Can we talk? Please? There's so much I need to explain. I deleted the message without responding. One more thing, Valerie said, pulling out another document. I think you should consider rebranding yourself. New business, new name. She slid a business card across the desk. It read, Phoenix Properties, rising from the ashes. Phoenix, I tested the word. I like it. Your mother would be proud, Dad said quietly, and I looked up to see tears in his eyes. She always said you had it in you. I should have listened. It's not too late, I replied, reaching for his hand. Want to hear about my plans for the factory district? He pulled up a chair. Tell me everything. Me. As I launched into my presentation, I felt stronger than I had in years. Colin had always told me my dreams were too big, but sitting there with Valerie's support, my father's growing interest, and my mother's spirit guiding me, I knew the truth. My dreams weren't too big. He was too small. And with that signature, the Wilson factory is officially yours, Stephen announced, sliding the papers across his desk. Your first major property acquisition. 6 months had passed, and Phoenix Properties was no longer just a dream. The old factory was already undergoing renovations, with 3 retail spaces pre-leased. I can't believe how fast everything's moving, Adeline said, squeezing my hand. Have you seen the local business journal? They're calling you the rising star of real estate development. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a text from Valerie. Turn on Channel 6, now. Adeline grabbed the remote for Stephen's office TV, flipping to the local news. There, standing in front of the most prestigious mansion in the Heights, were Colin and Danielle. The historic Bradford Mansion, crown jewel of the Heights district, is finally on the market, the reporter announced. Local executive Colin Richardson and his fiancée Danielle Armstrong are among the potential buyers. This house represents everything we've dreamed of, Danielle gushed to the camera. It's perfect for starting our new life together. Mute it, I said sharply. I've heard enough. Are you okay? Adeline asked. I'm fine. I straightened my blazer. Stephen, what do you know about the Bradford Mansion? He raised an eyebrow. It's been in the same family for generations. The current owner is looking to sell, but she's very particular about buyers. Wants to ensure the property's legacy is preserved. Interesting. I pulled out my phone. What's her name? Margaret Bradford. She's actually a friend of Valerie's. I was already dialing. Valerie, I need a favour. Can you arrange a meeting with Margaret Bradford? 2 days later, I sat in Margaret's elegant sitting room, sipping tea from bone china cups. I must say, Margaret said, studying me over her glasses, when Valerie told me about you, I was intrigued. Your restoration of the Wilson factory is quite impressive. Thank you. I believe in preserving history while adapting to the future. Unlike some potential buyers, she sniffed, who seem more interested in status than substance. You mean Colin and Danielle? I kept my voice neutral. I know them. Oh? Her eyes sharpened with interest. Colin is my soon-to-be ex-husband. Danielle was my best friend. They're getting married. Margaret set down her cup with a decisive clink. How absolutely dreadful. And now they want my house? They want a trophy, I corrected. I want to preserve a legacy. Do tell. I pulled out my proposal. I see this property as more than just a mansion. With the right renovations, the East Wing could become a community art gallery. The gardens could host local events. We could maintain its historical significance while making it part of the community's future. Margaret's eyes lit up. That's exactly what my grandfather always wanted. But the cost of such renovations would be covered by my company. I've already secured the funding. She studied me for a long moment. You know, dear, revenge can be a powerful motivator. This isn't about revenge, I said, then paused. Well, not entirely. It's about proving something to myself. The best revenge often is, she smiled. Let's discuss numbers. A week later, I was signing another set of papers in Stephen's office when my phone rang. It was Jayla, Colin's sister. Is it true? She demanded. Did you buy the Bradford Mansion? News travels fast. Colin is furious. He and Danielle had already told everyone they were getting it. They shouldn't have counted their mansions before they closed, I said dryly. He's saying you only did it to spite them. No, I corrected. I did it because it's a sound business investment. Spiting them is just a bonus. After hanging up, I turned to find Adeline grinning. You know they're planning their wedding for next month, right? I heard. And you now own their dream house. I do. So what's your plan? I smiled, thinking of the mansion's sprawling grounds and elegant architecture. I think it's time Phoenix Properties made a wedding gift gesture. You're not serious, Stephen interjected. Oh, but I am. I picked up my coat. They want the Bradford mansion? Let's make sure they get exactly what they wish for, just not quite how they imagined it. As we left the office, Adeline linked her arm through mine. You know, when you first started this business, I worried you were doing it for the wrong reasons. And now? Now I see you're doing it for all the right ones. You're not just getting even, you're getting ahead. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, crushed by betrayal and doubt. That woman would never have imagined owning the Bradford mansion, let alone having a thriving business. Getting ahead, I repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. The wedding invitation arrived today, Adeline announced, waving the cream-coloured envelope as she walked into my office at Phoenix Properties. They actually had the nerve to send you one. I took the envelope, running my fingers over the embossed gold lettering. Colin Richardson and Danielle Armstrong request the honour of your presence. Are you going to go? Adeline asked, perching on my desk. Before I could answer, Valerie burst in, her face flushed with excitement. You won't believe what I just heard. Danielle's been bragging at the country club about their wedding plans. Let me guess, they're still pretending they're getting the Bradford mansion. Better, Valerie grinned. They're telling everyone they're in negotiations with the new owner. That's you. And they're confident they'll be moving in right after the honeymoon. I laughed. Confident, are they? They don't know you own it, Adeline realised. They think some investment company bought it. Phoenix Properties is an investment company, I reminded her, then turned to Valerie. Have they made an offer yet? Their realtor called this morning. They're offering well above market value. I pulled out the folder I'd been preparing. Perfect timing. Stephen and I have been working on something special. What kind of something special? Adeline asked. Before I could explain, my father walked in. Nadine, we need to talk about this wedding situation. Dad, just hear me out. He held up his hands. I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be. But this plan of yours, are you sure it's wise? Actually, I said, opening the folder, it's more than wise, it's brilliant. Stephen helped me draft this contract. It's completely legal and absolutely binding. Valerie picked up the document, her eyes widening as she read. Oh, this is delicious. What is it? Adeline grabbed the papers. A very special wedding gift, I explained. We're going to offer them the Bradford mansion at their asking price, with some very specific conditions. Conditions? Dad looked worried. Nothing unreasonable, I assured him. Just some carefully worded clauses about property use, maintenance requirements, and community obligations. All very standard in historical property sales. And very expensive to maintain, Valerie added with a knowing smile. The best part, I continued, once they sign, they're locked in. No backing out without massive penalties. But why would they sign without reading the fine print? Dad asked. Because they're desperate to close before the wedding, Valerie explained. They've been telling everyone they'll be moving in afterward. Their egos won't let them admit defeat. Plus, Adeline added, reading the contract, these conditions are buried in legal jargon. They'll be so excited about getting the house they won't look too closely. Exactly. I took back the contract. They think they're getting their dream home. What they're actually getting is a money pit with strict usage requirements and astronomical maintenance costs. Nadine, Dad sighed. I know they hurt you. This isn't about hurt anymore, Dad. This is about consequences. They thought I was too stupid to succeed without Colin, too weak to survive their betrayal. Well, now they'll learn exactly what I'm capable of. My phone buzzed. A text from Stephen. Offer received from C&D. Ready to proceed? It's your call, Valerie said softly. But remember, whatever you do, make sure you can live with it. I looked at the wedding invitation still sitting on my desk, then at the contract in my hands. "Send them the counter offer," I texted back. "And Stephen, make sure it arrives during their engagement party tonight." "How do you know about their engagement party?" Adeline asked. "Jayla told me." She's still feeling guilty about not seeing what her brother was doing. "Will they sign?" Dad asked. "They will," Valerie assured him. "People like Colin and Danielle care more about appearances than details. They'll see what they want to see." I picked up the wedding invitation again, finally opening it. Inside was a handwritten note from Danielle. "I know we can never be friends again, but I hope someday you'll understand that everything happens for a reason." "You're right, Danielle," I murmured. "Everything does happen for a reason." I checked the RSVP card marking "will attend" with a flourish. "You're really going to their wedding?" Adeline asked, incredulous. "Of course," I smiled. "I have to deliver my gift in person." As my family exchanged worried looks, I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. Colin and Danielle had tried to break me, but instead, they'd forced me to become stronger than ever. "Trust me," I said, putting the invitation away. "Their wedding day is going to be unforgettable." The church bells chimed as I walked in, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue dress that had cost more than my entire wardrobe from my married days. Heads turned, whispers followed. "I can't believe she actually came," someone muttered. "Bold move," another replied. Jayla intercepted me before I could find my seat. "Nadine, I didn't think you'd really come. And miss my ex-husband marrying my ex-best friend. Wouldn't dream of it." "They signed the contract for the Bradford mansion last night," she said, lowering her voice. "Colin's been insufferable about it. Keeps talking about how they won." I smiled. "Did they?" Before she could respond, the wedding planner started herding everyone to their seats. I chose one near the back, perfect for observing without being obvious. Adeline slipped in beside me. "You don't have to stay," I whispered. "Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss this for the world." The ceremony began with all the pomp you'd expect from a couple desperate to prove something. Danielle floated down the aisle in a dress that probably cost as much as my first property investment. Colin beamed at her with the same look he'd once given me. "Dearly beloved," the priest began, and I felt Adeline squeeze my hand. "I'm fine," I assured her, and I was. Watching them exchange vows, I felt nothing but a detached sort of pity. They looked perfect together, both so focused on appearances, on proving they'd made the right choice. The reception was held in the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel. I waited until after dinner, after the toasts, after their first dance. Timing was everything. "Speech!" someone called out as Danielle finished thanking everyone for coming. "Nadine should give a speech." The room fell silent. Colin's face darkened, but Danielle, probably thinking she could prove how amicable everything was, smiled and gestured for me to stand. I rose slowly, champagne glass in hand. "I'd like to present the happy couple with their wedding gift." "Nadine," Colin warned, but I was already signalling to Stephen, who approached with an elegantly wrapped package. "Open it," I encouraged. "I insist." Danielle, perhaps hoping to diffuse the tension, began unwrapping the package. Inside was a framed document, their signed contract for the Bradford mansion, with a red bow attached. "I don't understand," she said, frowning. "Read it," I suggested. "Particularly the parts about the historical preservation requirements, mandatory community access, and annual maintenance costs." Colin snatched the frame, his eyes scanning the document. His face went from confused to angry to pale. "What is this?" he demanded. "Your dream home," I replied sweetly. "Owned by Phoenix Properties, my company. You signed the contract last night, remember? So eager to close the deal before the wedding." Danielle grabbed the contract, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling. "These requirements, these costs. Oh yes," I continued loud enough for everyone to hear. "The mansion must maintain its historical integrity, which means no modern renovations. The grounds must be open to the public 3 days a week for historical tours. And the maintenance costs? Well, historical properties don't come cheap. You can't do this, Colin sputtered. Actually, I can. You signed the contract, legally binding as your lawyer will confirm. If you'd bothered to have one review it before signing. You tricked us, Danielle accused. No, you tricked yourselves. So desperate to prove you'd won, you didn't even read what you were signing. The whispers around the room grew louder. I could see Colin's business associates exchanging glances, probably reconsidering their deals with a man who'd sign a contract without reading it. We'll fight this, Colin threatened. You're welcome to try, I smiled. But everything's legal. Ask your lawyer, after you've hired one, that is. I set down my champagne glass and picked up my purse. Congratulations on your wedding and your new home. I'm sure you'll make many memories there. During the 4 days a week, you're allowed to use it privately. As I walked toward the exit, Jayla caught up with me. That was brutal, she said, but she was grinning. That was business, I corrected her. They wanted the Bradford mansion? Now they have it, along with all the responsibilities and restrictions that come with owning a historical property. They'll be bankrupted by the maintenance costs alone, she realized. Only if they're bad with money, I shrugged. But then, we already know how well Colin reads contracts. At the door, I turned back one last time. Colin and Danielle were huddled with their parents, frantically reading through the contract. Their perfect wedding had turned into exactly what they deserved, a harsh lesson in consequences. Ready to go? Adeline asked, appearing at my side. More than ready, I replied. I have a meeting tomorrow about expanding the factory district project. As we left, the sound of Colin's angry voice followed us. What do you mean we can't back out of the contract? I smiled. Sometimes Karma needed a little help, and I was happy to assist. They're suing us, Stephen announced, dropping a thick folder on my desk 3 weeks after the wedding. Claiming fraudulent misrepresentation. Let them, Valerie said from her seat by the window. Every lawyer in town has already seen that contract. It's ironclad. My phone buzzed. Another message from Danielle. Please, we need to talk. The maintenance costs alone are destroying us. They've already missed their first maintenance payment, Stephen continued. The Historical Society is not happy. Neither is the community board, Valerie added. The mansion was supposed to be open for tours yesterday, but they kept the gates locked. I was about to respond when my office door burst open. Colin stormed in, his face red with anger, Danielle trailing behind him. You vindictive witch, he spat. You set us up. Actually, I replied calmly, you set yourselves up. I merely provided the opportunity. We can't afford these payments, Danielle pleaded. The Historical Society is demanding immediate repairs to the East Wing. The garden needs thousands in maintenance. All clearly outlined in the contract you signed, Stephen interjected. A contract you deliberately made impossible to fulfill, Colin shouted. Impossible? I stood up. Like it was impossible for me to succeed without you? Like my business dreams were impossible? That's different. No, it's not. You thought I was incapable of running a business. You mocked my ambitions. Well, guess what? I'm not just running a business. I'm running the business that owns your dream house. We'll lose everything, Danielle whispered. Like I lost everything. I turned to her. My marriage, my best friend, my trust, all gone in an instant because of your choices. We made a mistake, she admitted. We know that now. The only mistake you made was underestimating me. I picked up the contract. Everything in here is legal and standard for historical properties. If you'd bothered to read it, or consult a lawyer, you'd have known what you were getting into. Just let us out of the contract, Colin demanded. There's a clause for that, Stephen said helpfully. Section 23, paragraph B. They can terminate the contract for a fee of 3 times the purchase price. Colin's face went pale. That's millions. Then I suggest you start giving those historical tours, I said. The admission fees might help with the maintenance costs. You've destroyed us, Danielle sobbed. No, you destroyed yourselves. Your arrogance, your entitlement, your belief that you could take whatever you wanted without consequences. That's what destroyed you. A commotion in the outer office drew our attention. My father walked in, followed by Jailer. "What's going on here?" Dad asked, taking in the scene. "Your daughter is ruining our lives," Colin exploded. "Actually," Jailer cut in, "you ruined your own lives. I've seen the contract. It's exactly what any responsible historical property owner should expect." "Whose side are you on?" Colin demanded of his sister. "The side of karma, apparently," she replied. "There's another option," I said quietly. "You can sell the property." Hope flickered across their faces. "But," I continued, "due to the historical property restrictions, it can only be sold to an approved buyer. And currently, the only approved buyer is Phoenix Properties." "At a quarter of what we paid," Colin realised, reading the clause Stephen was pointing to. "You planned this all along?" "I planned to succeed," I corrected him. "Something you never thought I could do." "We'll fight this in court," he threatened. "You'll lose," Stephen said simply. "Every clause is legal, every requirement standard for historical properties. Your signature is on every page." Danielle sank into a chair, her designer dress crumpling. "What do we do?" "You have 3 choices," I said. "Keep the property and meet all requirements, buy your way out of the contract for triple the price, or sell it back to Phoenix Properties at a loss. Your decision." "You're enjoying this," Colin accused. "No," I replied honestly. "I'm not enjoying your pain. I'm enjoying watching you finally face consequences for your actions." "Come on," Jailer said to her brother. "I'll help you find a good lawyer, one who actually reads contracts before letting clients sign them." As they left, my father turned to me. "That was quite something." "Too harsh?" I asked. He shook his head. "No. Sometimes the best lessons are the hardest ones." "They'll probably sell," Valerie predicted. "Their pride won't let them give historical tours to the community they bragged to about owning the mansion." "And when they do," Stephen added, "Phoenix Properties will have acquired the Bradford mansion at a significant discount." I looked out my office window at the city skyline, thinking about how far I'd come from the woman who'd overheard her husband's betrayal in their garden. "You know what the best part is?" I said. "This isn't even about them anymore. It's about what comes next." "And what comes next?" Dad asked. I smiled, pulling out my plans for the Bradford Mansion's Community Arts Centre. "Something impossible." "The Bradford Community Arts Centre," I read from the newly installed plaque, running my fingers over the engraved letters. "What do you think, Mom?" I placed fresh flowers beneath the memorial bench we'd installed in the mansion's garden. The morning sun caught the dew on the roses, making them sparkle. "She would have loved this," Dad said, joining me, "especially the youth art program." "Ms. Davis!" A group of art students waved as they entered through the mansion's front doors, portfolios tucked under their arms. The building that Colin and Danielle had wanted to turn into their private showcase was now alive with creativity and purpose. "Ready for the board meeting?" Valerie asked, approaching with a stack of papers. "The factory district development numbers are impressive." Before I could answer, Adeline rushed over, practically bouncing with excitement. "You'll never guess who I just saw at the coffee shop." "Who?" "Colin and Danielle. They're moving to another state. Apparently his new job isn't quite as prestigious as his old one." "I heard they had to sell their car to cover the mansion's contract termination penalties," Valerie added. "Are you happy now?" Dad asked quietly. I thought about it watching another group of students enter the mansion. "I'm not happy about their suffering. I'm happy about what we've created here." "Speaking of creation," Adeline grinned, "wait until you see today's local business journal." She pulled out the magazine and there it was, my face on the cover. "Phoenix Rising, How Nadine Davis Transformed City Development." "The writer did a good job," Valerie noted, "especially the part about combining profitable development with community impact." "Ms. Davis," a teenage girl approached shyly. "Could you look at my portfolio? My art teacher says I might qualify for the scholarship program." "Of course," I smiled, gesturing toward the mansion. "Let's go to the gallery." Inside, the mansion's grand rooms had been transformed into light-filled gallery spaces. Local artists' work hung alongside student pieces, the walls alive with colour and creativity. "I remember when you first told me about your business dreams," Dad said as we walked through the gallery. "I was like Colin. I didn't believe in you. I'm sorry for that." "You changed your mind," I reminded him. "That's what matters." "Ms. Davis?" Stephen appeared at the gallery entrance. "The board is ready for you." In the converted library, now our conference room, the board members waited. Among them sat Jayla, who joined Phoenix Properties after leaving her brother's company. "Before we begin," she said, "I should tell you, Colin and Danielle signed the final settlement papers this morning. The mansion is officially, completely yours." "Good," I nodded. "Now we can focus on what matters. The factory district development is creating affordable housing, the Arts Centre is providing education opportunities, and Phoenix Properties is more successful than ever," Valerie finished proudly. After the meeting, I found myself back in the garden. A young couple was taking wedding photos by the fountain. We'd started renting the grounds for events to help fund the art programs. "Excuse me?" the bride called out. "Are you Nadine Davis, the owner?" I nodded. "Thank you for making this place accessible to everyone," she said. "We could never afford one of those exclusive venues, but this is perfect." As they returned to their photos, Adeline joined me. "Remember when you thought this place would just be your revenge?" It was never just about revenge, I realised. It was about proving something to myself. And what was that? That sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about creating something meaningful from the ashes of what they destroyed. My phone buzzed with a text from Danielle. "I understand now. What we did to you was unforgivable. But what you've done with the mansion, it's incredible. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you." I showed the message to Adeline. "Are you going to respond?" she asked. "No," I said, putting the phone away. Some chapters need to stay closed. The garden was filling with people. Artists setting up easels, families spreading picnic blankets, students sketching the flowering trees. This was what success looked like. Not the empty victory of revenge, but the lasting triumph of creation. "Ready to head back to the office?" Valerie called from the path. "We have that meeting about expanding the art program to the factory district." "Actually," I said, "let's have the meeting here." In the garden. As we settled onto the benches, I looked up at the mansion. No longer a symbol of what I'd lost, but a testament to what I'd found. My strength, my purpose, my true success. "So," I smiled, pulling out the expansion plans, "let's talk about what's next."